order. Will everyone please rise for a moment of silence? And I would like for all of you to please keep the following in your prayers. The family of former student agent Jaime Zapata, who passed. Also Raul T. Cepeda, who was a former employee for BISD. Valeriano de la Garza, who was also a former BISD employee. Also keep in your prayers Mr. Tito Mata's family in your prayers, his father who is very ill at this moment. Mr. Aguilar, could you please lead us on to the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas,
One state, under God, one
and indivisible.
For the records, Ms. Bettis, please let it reflect that all board members are present. We now go to item number 5, recommend approving the agenda of the regular board meeting of March 1st, 2011 with any corrections or deletions. Mr. Springston, yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam President. At this time, under Superintendent's Report, item 3 will be deleted from the agenda and backup. Item 4 will be deleted from agenda and backup. Under consent agenda, general function, item number 11, pages 80, 81, 82 will be replaced with page 80A. In closed meeting, consultation with attorney, auditor, item 38A will be deleted from the agenda and the backup.
Thank you, Mr. Springston. Do I have a motion?
Move to delete the said items.
Have a
Your motion is to approve.
motion to
correct?
I'm sorry, move to approve. Move to approve the deleted items.
motion by Ms. Peña, second by Mr. Aguilar. All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. We now go to item number 6, recommend approving the consent agenda. The board has agreed to discuss the following items. All of the items below that are not called out will be approved by consent. As per my colleagues, we will be discussing item number 6, item number 12, item number 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, and I believe we discussed 29 through 36 as well. Yes, Mr. Aguilar, go ahead.
Move that we move item number 23, with up to right after public audience,
23 and 24?
23 and 24.
After a public audience, and do I have a second?
I second.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I would also like to request a change in the order to place item 37 after 24.
Okay, so we take a vote to move 23, 24, and 37 right behind it, public audience? Okay, so I have a first, a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. We now go to, that was, yes, discussion. We're now going to go to item number 7, superintendent's reports, conference presentation. Item number 1, presentation of E-rate status. Mr. Springston?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As a board member request from Dr. Escobedo, I do have Mr. Mr. Robert Fisher here to do a presentation on the status of E-rate. Mr. Fisher?
Thank you, Mr. Springson. Madam President, Mr. Springson, members of the board, area superintendents, public audience. We have a bunch of what I consider memory lane. I've been doing the E-rate. My name is Robert Fisher from Technology Services Department. I've been doing E-rate for 13 years, and I thank Dr. Escobedo. I've reminded myself of things that happened in E-rate 2 in 1998 that has been fun, actually. I've had a good time. So if you give me a moment, I'll pass out. I hope that at the end of the presentation, we'll have everybody be able to apply for E-rate. I guess what we'll do is we'll try to follow what I have in the slideshow as well as what you have in front of you. What I did was I developed a PowerPoint presentation to describe the process of the E-rate. So hopefully, did it come? Yes. General overview of the E-rate program. There's a general information about E-rate itself, technology planning. All these are very, very key parts of the E-rate process. Requesting services on the Form 470, bidding process, ordering the services, the application renewals, funding commitments, begin receiving services, invoicing from USAC, and the deadlines will be covered in the presentation. General information about E-rate. E-rate timeline is very, very, very important. Commitments for E-rate are made by a funding year which runs from July the 1st of the following June the 30th of the funding year. The award letter or funding commitment decision letter for any one-year application may take over 2 years to be approved. Many times funding years may overlap other funding years. What it's saying is that for the Brownsville Independent School District, for the most part, for most applicants throughout the country, one application for E-rate is about this thick. The process is getting slower. I wish it was getting faster, but it's getting slower. The more people that find themselves in troubled times are working harder and harder to try to get the most out of E-rate throughout the country for eligible entities like ours. So the process for the review will take over 2 years for the BISD. Not uncommon. You'll see further into the presentation that a majority of the Region 1 service center schools also are in the same boat that we are. They are over 1, 2, in some cases I think there's 2 school districts in Region 1 that have not received 3 years of funding. And it's not necessarily not receiving the funding, it's the process. It's just standard routine questions and reviews, but you'll see it as the slideshow continues. General information about E-rate. Comments from E-rate Oh, we already talked about that, sorry. Who is eligible for E-rate funding? Schools, school districts, libraries, and consortium. Region 1 writes a E-rate grant for some of the smaller school districts. They get more benefit out of it, especially when they're tied into, some of their buildings are tied in, so they have a common denominator. E-rate discounts, how large are the discounts on eligible products and services? Again, eligible products and services. You'll find that later on in the slideshow that eligible products and services from E-rate are generally structured cabling, Cisco type equipment, networking equipment. I don't want to say Cisco because that standardizes, but the Brownsville Independent School District, we've standardized on a Cisco product. So you're going to find the majority of all the funds committed towards E-rate for the BISD will be related to Cisco equipment. It's all backed by the National School Lunch Program. The percentage of students who are eligible for National School Lunch Program in a school or school district, urban or rural. We get those every year. I get those generated, the numbers generated from the PEMS department, and right now we stand at 90 cents or 10 cents on the dollar. So when we go out for competitive bid, when we receive quotes from the vendor selected, we only pay 10% of that amount. This is to calculate your discount percentage on the discount matrix, but we are at 90%. E-rate categories of service, priority 1s and then priority 2s. E-rate forms, how do I file E-rate forms? In general, you have 3 options. File online, certify on paper, file on paper. Tip, it says USAC encourages a file online. We filed online since the inception. I believe that was E-rate 4 is when USAC went online and filed and certified online. E-rate eligible service list. What can BISD purchase through E-rate? Network infrastructure and cabling and equipment. I wish that we could buy computers. I wish that we could buy iPads and cameras and everything else, but USAC has a very detailed list of those items that are eligible through the E-rate process. So we have to follow the guidelines that are set forth. How long is an E-rate year? This part of the presentation is very, very important. Generally for the BISD, one E-rate year lasts over 3 years. The issuance of the Form 470 or the announcement to the world what BISD intends to purchase, we have to wait 28 days for the solicitation and the response. Submittal of the Form 471, quotations from the awarded vendor of what BISD intends to purchase that is E-rate eligible through the service list. Review by program integrity assurance and selective review. That is a pre-audit. That is a review that I go through once we submit this application that I have in this binder. The moment I submit it online, I start getting phone calls from PIA, Program Integrity Assurance. It's a pre-audit from E-rate that starts to find out, are you at 90% like you say you are? Show me the PEMS report. Have you purchased or are you asking for services that are E-rate eligible? Yes, we are. Have you made sure that you had a competitive bidding process? Yes, we did. Have you already done, have you met the deadlines? Well, yes, we have, because we file online. It won't let me do anything other than follow the guidelines set forth. So it goes through a lot of different things to find out if the buildings that you're wiring are actually educational buildings. As much as I would want to wire a building that doesn't have students in it, that's what this is all about, is wiring campus buildings and supply that connectivity for the student use. BISD receives a funding commitment decision letter during 2-year time frame. Eligible equipment has gone end of life. That becomes another issue. Because of the duration of time that it takes for one E-rate application to go through, and what I put on my submittal today, in 3 years, if approved, or when approved, that item may no longer be available. We all know that we all buy computers during Christmas for son or daughter. The moment that you receive it, you turn it on, and then the next Sunday you look in the paper, they have one a little bit better. Same idea with computer networking equipment. The moment that you put it out on the RFP, that that device may come end of life within that year. So when it comes time for the funding commitment decision letter in approximately 2 years, they will let you will let them know that those items that you asked for 2 years ago are end of life, and only they will approve the item substitution. There's a specific form that we put the detailed list of those parts, of those serial numbers, of those model numbers, of those E-rate eligible equipments. We send them to E-rate, USAC, they review it, and they only approve whether the item substitution was allowable or not. BISD issues the PO to the awarded vendor. Installation from the awarded vendor ensues for another year. So you may find that from the time that we announce to the world we want to do this, to the time that we go through the 28-day rule, to the time that we submit the application before the deadline, to the time that we go through the program integrity assurance, by the time we go through a selective review after that, we finally get the funding commitment decision possibly 2.5 years later, and then we start the process of the purchase order to pay our 10%, and installation then ensues. So an E-rate year definitely goes 2.5 to 3 years for us. And at the same time, I must bring this up, the next round of E-rate started again. So every year you apply for another round of E-rate. The problem is that I'm still being reviewed for 2 years ago, and I'm still putting in an application for this current year that will start getting reviewed as well. So when an E-rate reviewer, a PIA reviewer starts asking me questions, I have to find out what year you're talking about, what is the actual application number, so I can be very specific on something that I filed 2 years ago, something that I possibly could have filed last year, or something I'm filing currently. Who determines from year to year how much BISD gets? We do. We know the projects, or FRNs, we need to do from year to year. We write the RFP. We ask for the competitive bidding law, by law. We submit the awarded vendor. We determine what we want through the technology plan and what is available through the E-rate eligible service list. Never underestimate your needs, because you can't ask for more. You can always ask for less. And I say that because of the fact that the challenge with any school district, as well as BISD, is that if I ask for X amount for Longoria, or I ask for X amount for Hannah, and I find that they just received 20 more portables, if I didn't ask for it on the application 2 years ago, I'm going to be hurting. So sometimes I'll find myself asking for more things at the moment than what we need, and once we get awarded, then I'll only get those things that we need at that moment. It's better to do it that way than wish you would have put it on the application in 2 years' times. Does the BISD receive E-rate dollars? No. I need to make that very clear. BISD does not receive money. We never have and never will. What we're talking about for internal connections is the idea that we're only going to be spending our 10% of whatever the quotation was when we submitted it. So after 2 years' time, once we get the funding commitment decision letter, BISD only pays 10% of that bill. USAC, or the E-rate folks, pay for the other 90%. We don't receive any money. What we do receive is a dollar amount associated to the E-rate eligible goods and services that we asked for 2 years ago, last year, this year, whenever the funding commitment award letter comes. That's very, very, very important. The Brownsville Independent School District generates the POs in a 10% amount of what the award of the funding commitment decision letter. Here's a list of some of those campuses that we talked about earlier within Region 1 that have not received any dollar amounts associated to their requests. Edinburgh, Donna, and E-rate 11, E-rate 12, you have that list, and E-rate 13. We've already received and installed and actually been audited on E-rate 11, 10, 9, 7, 6, all the way down to E-rate 3, I believe, is when we got audited. And that's a good thing. I actually asked USAC after the installation dates to see if there is a chance that they can review our books to make sure that we are in compliance. And they do their well to come here anyhow, but It's a welcome challenge for us to make sure that what we're asking for, what we're receiving, is allowable by the federal government, because all these dollars are coming in from E-rate, the FCC. It's the parent company. Technology planning. Technology plan elements. You must write a technology plan that contains the following elements: goals and strategies, needs assessment, staff training, evaluation plan, budget. It says only for technology plans for 2010 and earlier. It's a good idea to always have a budget ready, a line item to be able to show your auditors when they come to do a physical audit that you had those line items available when you wrote the grant 2 years ago, 1 year ago, whatever that time frame was. Requesting services. The Form 470, it's an open competitive bid process. You identify and describe your desired categories of service and the function of the services. Describe the scope of your needs: a single school building, a library system, a state network. Notify potential bidders of the types and quantities of services that you need. That is your announcement to the world. Once you announce, or once you file your Form 470, then you have 28 days from that moment to wait for those competitive bids that come in. Here's a copy, or at least a sheet of the Form 470. Form 470 is normally about 13 pages. Competitive bidding process. You must ensure that competitive bid process is open and fair. You must keep all incoming bid correspondence of bidders and prepare to evaluate bids equally. All potential bidders have access to the information from your Form 470 and RFP, and they can respond to your requests. Example of competitive bid rule violations. The applicant has a relationship with a service provider that would unfairly influence the outcome of a competition or furnish the service provider with inside information. Someone other than the applicant or authorized representative of the applicant prepares, signs, and submits the Form 470 and certifies it. That's really bad. The acronyms and terms: the bid and the price is a primary factor. In evaluating the bids, the price of the eligible products and services must be the most heavily weighed factor in evaluating the bids. Here's a sample bid evaluation matrix. If we have more than one vendor, you'll be able to see on the side how the point system, and that's a necessary item. Gone through, like I said, about at least five KPMG audits, physical audits. That's what your bid evaluation is, very necessary item or an instrument. Administrative changes for the ESL. The complete list of service and products eligible for the E-rate support can only be listed in the ESL from now on and nowhere else in the rules. USAC will submit, and that's the form that I showed you a moment ago. This gives you the eligible service list. Examples of the internal connections: routers, switches, email servers, DHCP servers, DNS, and then you can see where it says conditionally eligible: tape drives, APC battery backups, and things that are not eligible is anything to do with an application server. That's it. After that, I wish we could buy computers, and I wish we could buy a bunch of other stuff, the end nodes as we call them, but they're not E-rate eligible. All E-rate really does is try to get the transport of the electronic signal to the wall plate, and from the wall plate or the wireless connection, from that point out to the end user is not E-rate eligible. Basic maintenance of internal connections. The support of the basic maintenance of eligible internal connections. Examples: repair and upkeep of eligible hardware, wire and cable maintenance, basic technical support, and configuration changes. Ordering services. The Form 471. The purpose of the Form 471 provides the information for the service providers and eligible services you have chosen. Identify the eligible schools and libraries that will receive the services. Include your discount calculation information and certify your compliance with the program rules. That's a sniglet or a snapshot of the Form 470. Again, that's about 13 pages long as well. All done online. Funding request number, the identifying number assigned to the Form 470 Block 5, The funding request number is a project for us. Every project is a campus. So if we find in the technology plan and working with the fine folks throughout the district that the needs are great for these 5 campuses or these 7 campuses, that's where we look to find out whether we need more routers or different routers, different switch, more switches, different wiring, more wiring, wireless, and so on. Service provider identification number is the SPIN number that's assigned to each one of the service providers. That's a unique number that they have. Service providers may have more than one SPIN number to identify separate business units or states in which they operate. Duplicate funding requests. This is a very, very, very important. Because of the duration of a PIA or selector review, it is encouraged that the applicant submit a new Form 471 application in the current year with duplicate funding requests from the previous unfunded year, so to ensure your request and documentation has been received accurately. That's very, very important. What I'm finding out that E-rate does this on their application. If we filed 2 years ago and we still haven't been funded, I will take 2-year ago application and reissue it again last year. And if we still didn't do it, I'll reissue it again this year to triply make sure, if that's a word, triply make sure that that application has been submitted and making sure that it is in the review process. Very important. I don't know why USAC started doing that, but the moment they did, I bid on it. Because the application process takes so long, I don't know what happens. I'm finished with PIA. I will even ask him, do you have any more questions for me? No, we don't. The next stage from the PIA review is a selective review. Somebody a little more knowledgeable, I tend to believe, that they review it a little more meticulously on my applications. So that's the process that takes so long. And they'll ask, is this an application or a reissue from a prior year? Yes or no? I make sure that we do that every single time, that we haven't had a funding commitment decision letter in a prior year. I will reissue another one. Item 21, attachment. The description of the services associated with funding requests. That is the detailed list of the quotations that we received. They want to know exactly what you're buying, how many you're buying, what the price is. Application review and funding commitments. The program integrity assurance, what we just spoke of, and the selective review, USAC groups that reviews and makes funding decisions on program applications. The funding commitment decision letter is the award letter, a letter issued by USAC to the applicant and the service provider that contains commitment decisions on funding requests. E-rate questions PIA review. Necessary to make sure you comply with the rules, that you are an eligible entity, that you applied for only eligible services, you made eligible use of those services, you followed the competitive bidding process, and you have a written technology plan. During the PIA, USAC reviews your Form 471 to check the eligibility of the schools and the libraries and their discount levels, verify that the services you requested are eligible discounts, give you an opportunity to make allowable corrections to your form, in some cases ask for additional verification of the compliance with program rules, and in some cases, because of the complexity of some applications, the review could last for some time. Receiving your funding commitment. By the time that you get to your funding commitment, again, I reiterate, you've already lost about 2 years of review process and paperwork. So by the time that you receive the funding commitment decision letter that states the dollar amount associated to the eligible goods and services that you asked for, end of life could have happened. Portable buildings might have vacated because I asked for something very specific for Hannah, and those portable buildings aren't there anymore. I get back with the reviewer and let them know things have changed in the 3 years since the review, or 2 years or 1 year, whatever the time duration is. So some of the things that we're not asking for anymore, because I know that the moment that we finish the installation process and the vendor's paid, I'm going to get a letter, which is welcomed. I'm going to get a letter from USAC stating they're going to send an auditing team for a physical audit. I can't have more things than what we ask for than what we have, than what we need. Nor would I ask for things that we don't need, because of the fact that we pay 10% of it. We use taxpayers' dollars, and I don't want to spend things about local taxpayer funds for things that we don't use. If nothing else, more importantly, it's waste and fraud, and I could go to jail for that. So there are a lot of things that once the form, the funding commitment decision letter has been delivered and issued, that I must get back with the reviewers and let them know that things have changed. Some things have changed insofar as, like I say, the campus, new building came up, an old building was torn down. Portable buildings have been moved away, end of life on products. So there's a lot of things that we go through. The budget. Applicants are required to have sufficient budget funds to cover their non-discounted share of the E-rate expenses. Unfortunately, what the SLD's news brief doesn't carefully define is what is meant by non-discount E-rate expenses. Such expenses are not just non-discount portion of E-rate eligible service, but include all of the expenses for ineligible services needed to make effective use of the E-rate funds. What it's saying is that because we're going to give you these dollar amounts associated to the goods and services that you asked for, are you just going to do that and nothing else? Are you going to buy computers for your kids? Are you going to work some kind of a plan for education of these computers? Is there some kind of training involved? We're not just going to give you all these dollars associated to the things that you had asked for if you don't have a plan for using it once it's installed. So that's primarily what the budget's asking for as well as our 10%. Spin changes. This is very important as well. Spin changes is a service provider identification number change. Pre-commitment spin changes. Corrective spin changes only. If I made an error for whatever reason and I put a wrong number, but I wrote the name of the vendor that we wanted, that's a corrective spin change. That's allowable by USAC, and they'll work with me in order to make those clerical error changes. Post-commitment spin changes, operational spin changes, must have legitimate reason to change, such as a breach of contract or the provider that you selected 2 years ago, 1 year ago, is unable to perform the services that you contracted them to do so. And must select provider with next highest point value in the evaluation. That's the only way that you can change the spin number of a vendor after a funding commitment decision letter has been issued. Service provider identification number, once a funding commitment decision letter has been issued, can a school district request a spin change to another vendor? No. Changes in vendors can only take place if the awarded vendor is unable to perform, i.e. vendor bankruptcy. Once a funding commitment decision letter has been issued, can the BISD make adjustments to the initial Form 471 application? No. Item substitutions is the only way that we can make any changes to what we submitted. That's when I go back to, if I say that I think that Hannah High School is going to have 10 more portables, I need to include that into the Form 471. 2 years ago, 1 year ago, whenever I asked for it. I wish I had that crystal ball, and I wish a lot of technology directors around the country had that crystal ball. But it's easier for anybody in the E-rate process to ask for a little bit more wiring or a little more switches so far as the number. And when those 3 years, those 2 years, that 1 year, when I get the funding commitment decision letter, I look at the snapshot of where we're at of Hannah, of Longoria, of Pace, of all the campuses that are out the district that we asked for in that particular E-rate year, and find out if we actually need all of it. And for the most part, we do cut away. We do cut away a lot of the things that we asked for because, again, it's waste and fraud. I can't do that. Beginning receiving the services for the Form 486. The Form 486, in short, is exactly what we just talked about. The funding commitment decision letter says, Fisher, here's the dollar amount of the E-rate eligible services that you requested. We're going to award you. But the Form 486 is something that I file. Ma'am, sir, from E-rate, we don't need this. The building didn't get built. The portable buildings aren't there. This is what we need, a smaller version of what you awarded us. So many times, a lot of these things take place, and that's placed on the Form 486. The purpose of the Form 486 is to notify USAC that your eligible services that have started and begin delivery, and the invoices for those services can be processed and paid to the vendor, their portion. You may file the Form 486 no later than the receipt of the funding commitment decision letter. There's no sense in filing a Form 486 if you haven't been awarded. Provide the name of the technology plan approver that approved your technology plan. For us, it's the state of Texas, TEA. Report your status of compliance with SIPA. There's a copy, or at least a sniglet, of the Form 486. Acronyms and terms, the Form 486 notification letter, and the Child Internet Protection Act. Invoicing USAC. Applicants have a choice between two methods of invoices: billed entity, or the bearer form, or the service provider invoice, or the Form 474. That is a form that I don't do. That's a form that the vendor does in order to receive their portion of the payment. Requirements to fulfill before invoicing USAC. Applicants and service providers receive the funding commitment decision letter from USAC for the services being invoiced. Applicants must file a Form 486 and receive a Form 486 notification letter. Service providers must file a Form 473. Again, that's a form that I'm not familiar with. Only the vendors file those forms. A copy of the Form 472, acronym, the bearer form, the quarterly disbursement report, and the Form 473. Deadlines. Audits. The Brownsville Independent School District has undergone numerous audits. These audits are both internally done by the FCC, Schools and Libraries Division, and the external audits done by KPMG Auditing Services out of Chicago for the FCC. Application deadlines. The Form 470 posted at least 28 days before the filing of the Form 471. Keep in mind the Form 471 application filing window opens and closes dates. Opening and closing dates, sorry. Form 471 received or postmarked no later than 11:59 Eastern Standard Time on the day of the close of the Form 471 application filing window. The Form 486, the Form 472, and any appeals. E-rate audits. Various types of audits can be done by the following. USAC has internal reviews. USAC has external reviews, such as KPMG. The FCC, Office of the Inspector General, special investigations can either be done random or selected. USAC site visits random. You have 1,000 per year, 84 per month. Physical site reviews for waste and fraud and abuse, enhanced outreach to school and library community, gathering information on the procurement, and there's the URL. What I'd like to do, if I could, I think it's on page 47 of your documents that you have. Let's see.
Is it 48 maybe? 47 is a cover sheet.
Yes, ma'am. 40, you'll see where it says internal connections, says E-rate 2 and some dollar amounts. What I did was I compiled for you the list of dollars that we receive. Again, I have to reiterate, it's not money that we receive. They're dollar amounts associated to the E-rate eligible goods and services that we asked for. You'll notice on that page the funding commitment, or at least what I requested
After
insofar as.
46.
I'm sorry?
The page is after 46 because
Yes, ma'am.
the dollar
Correct.
amounts don't have numbers.
Yes, ma'am, right after page 46. I inserted a spreadsheet, or multiple spreadsheets in here for you. They're done by different years, starting with 1998, I believe, was E-rate round 2. And again, the original commitment, you'll see the dollar amount there, and it'll say the commitment amount, and then this is the total authorized disbursement. And I need to touch upon those three different categories. The original commitment was what I asked for on the Form 471. These were things that went out for a bid that we submitted. These were things that we wanted. The commitment amount, which is the next column, is the dollar amounts associated to the review process that may have taken a year, 2 years. These are the dollars that they said, well, Fisher, you asked for all this, but this one little item right here, it's not eligible, so we'll take that out. Fair enough. So there's a, not a barter, it's work back and forth to find out what those E-rate eligible items are. The very last column is a total authorized disbursement. Might find that price went down. Can't say price went up because I can't ask for anything more. So if price went down, that's a savings. We're only paying the vendor for those items that were installed, and the price is if it went down. If it's went up on their part, I can't worry about that, nor can they. You can't ask for more than what you submitted. So if the price went down, again, I have to they only invoice that dollar amount, and we only pay that 10% of only those things. I get a copy of everything that the vendor submits to the E-rate USAC folks for my approval. They won't pay a dime. USAC won't pay a dime until I review that those are things that you received for your BISD. Yes, it is. This item, no, I didn't. So we're not. They only pay for those things that I sign off for. The following pages, again, are E-rate round 3, E-rate round 4, and so on. I want you to please take particular attention when we get up to E-rate round 7, I believe maybe 8. You'll notice that some of the things, like in E-rate round 7, on the far right, you'll see where it says canceled FRN by applicant. That was definitely me. But it might have been something that we found that after those 2 years of review that we didn't need anymore. And if I asked for it, it would be sitting around, or it would have been a waste. So there's a lot of things that you're going to find in this that I'm the one that canceled that particular project or that FRN within that application because we didn't need it. The next page, E-rate round 8. You'll see where it said canceled FRN by applicant. That was me. I canceled each and every one of those for E-rate round 8. E-rate round 8 was a year that was very, very cumbersome with USAC as well as myself. The problem, again, we're in a 2 to 3 year review span. What I did was I took the E-rate 8 application, again, and I duplicated it in my E-rate round 9 application. E-rate round 8 took an enormous amount of time for review, and I couldn't figure out why. So I took everything that we had in E-rate round 8 and I applied it as a duplicate or reissue for E-rate round 9. With a different reviewer, believe it or not, the reissue got funded before the original. I don't know why and I don't know how, but it did. The moment that I got the funding commitment decision letter for the reissue of everything that we asked for in E-rate round 8, the moment that we got the funding commitment decision letter, I get a letter from the E-rate round 8 reviewer saying that we did not, in fact, have a technology plan. Well, then how did I get it for E-rate round 9? Beside the point, I wasn't in the wrong, and I wasn't going to let it go because we'd already received it for 9, but it was, I guess it was a principle to me that I knew that we had nothing wrong. So you'll see in your applications a separate paper that I gave you. It's titled Funding Commitment Decision. I'm sorry, the Federal Communications Commission. In the matter of, and this is me, I appealed it. And I didn't appeal it to USAC. I appealed it directly to the FCC. And you'll see the words Brownsville Independent School District on there. We won. The problem is that we already received everything we asked for in E-rate round 8 in round 9. I did it from my principle, to know that I didn't do anything wrong. So we were funded, but I denied it all because we had already received it in E-rate round 9. So I wanted to bring that to your attention that, and it saves us as a school district to, or any school district, to be able to duplicate your requests in case of their clerical error, not mine. So in the back of the pages, I believe that you'll see on your handouts, those years that we were approved on our technology plan. I think I gave everybody a copy from 2004, 5, 6, and so on, just to show you that we in fact had a TEA approved plan. And that's what I used when I filed the appeal. I could have filed the appeal with USAC, but I didn't. I knew that we were right, and I knew that other school districts were exactly in the same boat, and there were. As you can see where it says Brownsville School District et al., there were probably another 10 school districts throughout the country that had the same error. And it was good that we got that changed. I don't know what they did with theirs, but I'm glad that we did a duplicate for the following year and got the same services. E-rate round 9, as you can see, that is the application number 525121, all 10, 12 of those, or E-rate round 8s. They were just that reissue. And below that, you'll see 53369. That was the application for that current year. And each one of those represents a campus or projects of those campuses. The following page, E-rate round 10, already been, again, installed and approved. E-rate round 11, you'll see E-rate round 11. Please take note of that one as well. Canceled FRN by applicant, that's me. I did a duplicate, we received it the prior year, so I canceled it. Every single time since E-rate round 8, I do it clockwork. I reissue what I asked for last year if we haven't been funded to make sure that our documents in order. And it saved us. and so on. E-rate round 12, canceled by applicant again because we'd already received that in E-rate round 11, and we're still pending the top portion. E-rate round 12 and 13, we're still in review. I get, not every day, but at least twice a week, I get email or correspondence with my reviewer, selective reviewer, for E-rate round 12, and I have a different reviewer for E-rate round 13. It's just that as you can see, the applications are so large that it takes a lot of time, a lot of patience on their part. And they're dealing with maybe 14 different school districts at their time as well. So to finish off with the deadlines, the audits, contacts, I guess that's it. With any questions, thank you very much. I apologize it took very long, but it's a passion of mine, and to get every single thing that we can for every student and every user in this district, to have those means, to be able to take the state online test concurrently, to be able to provide the education for all the kids electronically, and to move this school district forward in technology. I invite any questions, please.
Thank you. Dr. Squirrel, you have some questions. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Fisher, thank you very much for this very, very comprehensive and extensive presentation. You certainly covered a lot of information, and I personally learned a lot from it. Please pardon my voice. I'm recovering from something. I do have a couple specific questions, and you touched on some of them, but I just want to clarify.
Sure.
What's the status of 09 and 10 applications, which would be, I guess, E-rate round 12 and 13? Now, I think I saw on one of your slides that we're still waiting for a response. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. That's why, just a moment ago, sir, that
Right.
I alluded to the idea that we still have, and it's standard. Like I said, we still have a lot of school districts in Region 1, and I'm sure there's thousands of them throughout the country that have not been awarded E-rate 11, and we've already been awarded that. E-rate 12 has a specific selective review that I have to go through, and E-rate 13. So their routine questions that they normally ask is just, I see that there's so many other school districts that are in the same boat we are, that we don't want to increase local tax base in order to pay, even though we only pay 10%. Every time that I say yes to something, it's going to come out of local taxpayer funds. And I want to tell you this too, sir.
If I may, sir, because I have very specific questions.
apologize.
I apologize, because we have
Yes,
a
sir.
complicated agenda. So while we're waiting for these applications, do we communicate at all with USAC, or do we simply
definitely.
wait?
At
Okay.
least
Do you
twice
do
a
that
week.
just periodically, or?
No, sir, at least twice a week. As a matter of
Twice a
fact,
week, right.
sometimes if I don't hear from them, I shoot them an email. If
And
there's
what do
anything
they
you need from
respond?
me, sir, madam,
What
yes,
are
sir.
their typical responses like?
No, a lot of times they'll just say, they're fine. They're right for the moment. They're still reviewing the
Just
paperwork.
pending?
Yes, sir.
Sure. Something that is not quite clear to me, and I know that you can elaborate. The 2 and 5 year rule, how does that work, and how do we use that to our advantage?
That's very, very important, very important. The 2 and 5, I always play it as like a deck of cards. If I do something for Longoria Elementary School this year, I can only do something for Longoria School in 5 years' time. So you can only do 2 things for one school in a 5-year span. So that becomes a problem. It really does. It's hard to juggle that. you don't want to throw out your card if you're only going to get a router. You got to make sure that we get with the technicians, we get with the network folks that we have here within our department to review the campus to see how old the equipment is. Will it take us into another 3 years and so on? It's very detailed, and that is very tricky. You're right. That 2 and 5 year rule is very tough. So far, it's worked out very well. If, Lord forbid, if there's a chance that E-rate goes tomorrow, the equipment that we have in 100% of our campuses will ride us for another 3 years. I'm confident in that.
Good. In 2011, which would be, I guess, E-rate year 14,
Yes, sir.
do we expect similar scenarios as far as the timelines and
Most
the waiting? They're very similar one from
Yes, sir.
another.
The only reason being is, this is my personal opinion, more and more school districts are finding themselves in this financial crunch around the country. So they're looking toward grants, they're looking toward programs like the E-rate program, and you're having more applicants. We say that we're at 90%. They go clear down to 50 or 40%. It all is determined upon your PEMS data, the National School Lunch Program. If you have free and reduced, then we get 90. If you have some campuses that have a higher tax base, they don't get as much money, but even that little bit always helps them as well. So as the E-rate program continues into the future, I see it still being a problem of the review process taking 2 to 3 years.
Sure. And just one final question.
Yes, sir.
How was our vendor participation, say in 09 and 10? How was the participation there?
It was okay. I'm not happy with I wish in South Texas we had a lot more vendors that would apply to our RFPs. I truly do, because we follow the rules of procurement. We have to, and by review, we are. Sure. But like anybody else, like yourself, we shop around for TVs. We want to go to 5 different places. We even shop online to see if we can get it. So we try to do the very best we can, because again, even though we're only paying 10%, we're paying 10% of, including my money, taxpayer funds. So,
so what was the
we're
participation like
diligent
in
about
09
what
and
we
in
do.
10?
I'm sorry?
So what was the vendor participation in 09 and 10? 1, 3, 5, 50?
I would say 2 or 3 vendors, and E-rate 10,
Which is about average?
about the same. Yes, sir.
Well, again, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very detailed, and I appreciate you.
Thank you, sir.
You presenting it. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. I don't know if anybody else does. It was very informative. Thank you for your report. You know, I'd like to go over the figures that we've been able to save out of Fund 199,
Yes, ma'am.
because that money, the expenditures that come out of that, if we don't get any reimbursement or any services, then we don't have to use from Fund
Absolutely.
199, correct?
That's
So
correct.
let's make sure that it's clear that at the end, we still have to fund it from the 199 monies.
Yes, ma'am.
Correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, in 1999, the district recovered 96%.
Yes, ma'am.
The submitted amount, the requested amount by our instructional technology was $3,712,000. In the year 2000, we submitted $3,316,000. We recovered 88%. 2001, the district submitted $4,660,000. We recovered 97%. 2002, the district submitted requested amount $8,790,000. We recovered 95%. 2003, the district submitted $8,266,000. The district recovered 93%. 2004, the district submitted $9,952,000. We recovered 100%. 2005, the district submitted $17,134,000. 93% was recovered. 2006, the district submitted $25,854,000, and we got 93%. 2007, we submitted, the requested amount was $25,107,000. We recovered 88%. 2008, We submitted 44,663,000. We recovered 87%. And you are correct. A lot of the other districts that I've done research on,
Yes, ma'am.
they've recovered in the year of 2009 already. And as per my research that I've done, I believe there was notices through the years as you go and you have to be a bug in somebody's ear and follow up and so forth. Because I was told that if we don't follow up, it sits there. It sits there just with no attention because there's just so many districts. Because of the Federal Communication Commission that regulates it, and because of the fraud, and to protect against fraud and waste and abuse.
Yes, ma'am.
That is why this issue is so important to us. And I thank Dr. Escobedo for bringing it up because USAC gave me a case number, and it is my understanding that through the process that I became a board member, I've read every single weekly letter.
Yes, ma'am.
And as per the communication that we get by administration, and I'm going to read what is given to us on a weekly basis. In April of 21st, 2009, we received a document from administration stating that you have been working diligently throughout the district, and every individual in your department is doing something, either emails, antivirus, the Destiny Library software, training, so forth.
Yes, ma'am.
And we're also told that it's a $50 million network. But never once was the prior board members, such as some of us that still sit here, or as of today, some of these board members have been notified that we had issues or that they had concerns of the applications that were filed. As the research that I have done, because I know that some districts have saved money from their fund balance and they're happy that they got their percentage in and that they don't have to spend so much out of Function 199. It is my understanding that the 2009, there was numerous notices sent out to the district. We were not notified, not once, of any of those notices that there was issues and concerns with. Is the vendor, how long has this vendor been in place?
I don't know what issue.
The vendor that we have right now, how long has he been, has he gotten the bid?
Probably since 2005. I'm guessing 2005, maybe 2004.
I believe this vendor is newer than that because
No,
newer.
Understood,
not just
but one thing, the current vendor that we have, started around with E-rate round 2, if we go that route, because it started out by a company named of Sabre. And then I believe in 2003, they became Sabre Data. And then it was bought out by another company by the name of Kent in 2004 or 2005. And in 2005, they were purchased by a company by the name of Avnet. And that brings me up to 2007, I believe. And they were bought out by a company named of Kalence. And Kalence was bought out last year by a company named of Insight. So I guess, yes, ma'am, there were portions of the old company's employees still there. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. It is my understanding that for the 2009, the submission that the forms that we submitted for $50,471,000,
Okay.
we did not meet the deadline, which was June 30th of 2010. And as per the response, it was due to the lack of invoices and the response of the notifications that we failed to do so. This is the information that I was given. Therefore, I have a concern because USAC was the one that I communicated with to
Understood.
make sure And it does give us a breakdown of the FRN numbers,
Yes, ma'am.
and I checked numerous FRN numbers, and all of them indicate, one of them is for 88,000, the other one's for 36,000, the other one's for 54, and you go down, some of them 1 million, you know, there's a lot of 1 million here on some of these FRN numbers. But it is my understanding, as I was reviewing the FRN numbers, it is my understanding they responded that no invoices were submitted. And numerous times they attempted to get information from either the vendor or our district. I don't know. I just know that that was the response. And, you know, when we're having to deal with a fund balance 199 and we're going into a crisis situation financially, I think that this needs to be looked at very, very thoroughly. It's of great concern because this is something that a lot of districts have taken advantage throughout the nation, not just the state of Texas. But I also spoke to your coordinator, state coordinator.
Yes, ma'am.
You know who she,
Ms. George, I believe.
Kathy George.
Yes, ma'am.
Kathy George, yes, sir. And I also spoke to Maria Elena Ovalle,
Yes,
which
ma'am.
is Region
Region
1,
one.
to become familiar with the whole process and the system. And, you know, I already knew what it entails or how the process and how big your book was going to be, but it concerned me because when the vendors are supposed to be doing their due diligence and administration's supposed to be reporting to us to keep us up to date as to what's going on, and every single weekly report, I never saw any of that being reported to us, that, you know, knowing that we use fund balance money to be able to maintain the instructional technology. And I have more of a concern because the STARS program, and I think Dr. Sada is really familiar with the STARS program that's going to come into play, and so is Mr. Springston. Yeah, we have to be up to date because our teachers are going to depend that, if I'm not mistaken, on that program. So it's really, really critical that this situation is not taken lightly. You know, and but that was a deadline for 2009, which means that those 50,471,635.12, even though we're, you know, lunches, you know, our PEMS data is there to support it somewhere, somehow, you know, like Washington, you know, Federal Communication Commission says, you know, in order for us to make sure that we're functioning the way we need to function, there's a lot of details in there. And I just thought, you know, I share that with my colleagues because I know that he had a concern, and I wanted to know how long this vendor has been in place as well. So, you know, I just had a concern. And then when I printed, because all of this information is on data.
Yes, ma'am.
You can't go wrong. It's all data.
Understood.
So under USAC, what the information was given to me, it's here. It specifies that notification was sent on a certain day, 6/9 of 2009, 6/16 of 2009, 5/12 of 2009, 9/8 of 2009, 9/3 of 2009, 5/12 of 2009. You know, and I've been sitting on this board since November of 2008, sir, and this was never brought up to our attention. So if we have a concern, you know, I think
I fully understand.
this was great for us to know and to review as how the program works and how, you know, really how strict the Federal Communication Commission takes this, you know, from invoices to documentation to the forms.
Understood.
And they explained to me, if there's something missing, you know, it's kicked it out. I mean, we don't stand a chance. So, you know, I thank Dr. Scovelo for bringing it up.
Ma'am,
And thank you, Mr. Fisher. Go ahead, Mr. Aguilar.
again, Mr. Fisher, thank you for such a detailed presentation. I think it's well done. However, I want to ask you to please answer the question that those concerns that Mrs. Presas has asked you to answer, and I don't think you were given an opportunity to answer. Then perhaps we all concerned. If they're concerned, their issues, let's listen to it. Let the board know what those concerns are. We can throw numbers around. If we were here in 2008, never did I hear where the superintendent was informed or the administration was informed. If there are really issues, I think the administration should have known and being brought to us, not at the way it is today. So would you please respond to Mrs. Presa's concerns, and perhaps those more concerns that she has that you might want to ask her?
Well, there's a couple issues that I need to explain. The numbers that she spoke of are true numbers that were requested on the original Form 471. However, like, one of the things was that, well, I do duplicates. I take a prior years and I bring it in, so the 40 million may have been 20 million. Those are things that just need to be brought up. But the true thing is that invoices that USAC sends, or at least requests that the vendor makes payment or receives invoicing, that's not forms that we have anything to do with. That's the vendor dealing with USAC on their portion of their payment. We only pay 10%, only 10%. To date, I can tell you roughly that the Brownsville Independent School District, since I've been authoring the E-rate program, has invested $199 out of the last 12 years. I'm guessing a little bit less than $10 million, about $1 million per year at the very end. So we're only paying that 10%. And again, she's right. The numbers that are on that paper showed everything that I asked for. But two things, again, like I say, is that there's duplicate requests that I did from a prior year that I canceled. So those numbers will tally up. But the point of the matter is that we're only paying the 10, and I don't mean to lighten that because it's still taxpayer monies, and she's very, very true. But we're only dealing with the 10%. When we get invoiced against our purchase order that was issued, the purchase order is only for the 10% of the amount of the project. So the vendor, through USAC, only asks for those 10% funds. And we only pay for those items that we'd asked for and got installed. So if there's any discrepancy between the vendor and USAC, I truly wouldn't know that. Only thing that I get is what they call, I can't remember what the actual terminology of there's a form that they give us with the invoice that say these were the things installed. After that point, the vendor deals with the government on their, in this case, 90% of the invoice. So I guess I'm not privy to those dollar amounts or those issues.
So, Mr. Fisher, so you're responsible for the 10% that we are obligated to pay.
That's it. That's all the PO's for.
The vendor and somebody else, you have no control of that.
That's correct, sir.
You mentioned in your presentation that you audit every year.
Yes, sir.
By different.
In most cases, KPMG out of Chicago. Yes, sir.
Okay. Have they ever found any fraud or misuse
hope
of
no, sir.
funds,
I
or
wouldn't be here if they did.
misappropriation of funds,
No, sir.
complaints about the vendors that there are only 2 or 3,
No, sir. If
anything like that that you perhaps.
USAC or the FCC ever had a problem with the vendor, then they deal with the vendor, and the possibility is there to remove from the eligible vendor list or SPIN number. There's that, again, but that's out of my hands. They deal with the vendor at that time.
Ms. Presas?
Thank you, Mr. Fisher.
Yes, go ahead.
May I address Mr. Fisher?
Sure, go ahead. Well,
So would it be correct?
well, Mr. Springston,
sorry.
you're supposed to address Mr. Springston for his staff.
I'm sorry, it was a long one, so I kind of got lost there for a little while on the page, but I was keeping up with you. So is it correct to say that if in fact there was a concern with USAC in reference to the vendor, and they deal with the vendor directly, they will not let you know, therefore you don't let us know because we have nothing to do with them.
I wouldn't know
Even
that
though
they're
it's
missing
out in the
something.
internet and it's information that's out to the public. This is why I so appreciate that you're here standing to explain, so that it doesn't look like somebody in administration was maybe told or didn't tell us, but you didn't know. Am I correct?
And that's correct, but may I add one more thing?
Sure.
She's right.
Yes,
Ms. Press
she's
is
correct.
exactly right about the funding year. The
Right.
funding year starts on July the 1st and it ends June the 30th. However, if you're awarded in September, it's not fair that the vendor only gets 4 months to do the complete install of all the projects. So with internal connections primarily, you don't, she's right, the funding year ends in June 30th, but what we do immediately, once the Form 486 has been received by me, I file an extension. of the projects. Because we have wind, weather, hurricane, whatever it is, that it's allowable by E-rate to ask for, in most cases, till September the 30th. After that time, I don't recall what the vendor's duration of time after the last wire has been pulled in order for them to submit their invoices to USAC for their reimbursement. I don't know what that number is because that's not a form that I would
But-
fill out.
Okay, I appreciate that, but are they obligated to tell us that there's a problem with people not responding and not answering?
No, no, they're not obligated, no.
Okay,
They can let me know, I guess, but
Have they ever?
I have not had any correspondence with USAC or schools and libraries related to the particular vendor that we have currently and in prior years of their inability to invoice before a deadline that I don't know what that is.
Well, I can see the passion in what you do. So
I
for that
appreciate
reason,
that.
I appreciate that. So for that, that's why I want to clarify. If for some reason they have a problem with a vendor, it's their obligation to remove him, not us, because we've done our part. And after that, our hands are tied. We have nothing else to do with that vendor or how they get their money from the vendor or
I
as long as we
wonder,
get our
and
services.
This is just a thought, I don't know, but I wonder why a vendor, and she may be right, definitely I wonder why a vendor would not submit for their portion on time and subject themselves of not being able to receive the dollar amounts associated. Just my thought, I don't know that for a fact, it's a speculation of mine.
Would that be for us to go out and investigate, or is something that we have nothing to
To be
do
honest
with?
with you, I wouldn't care, that's their problem. I need to
Okay.
work on what we're doing here.
Okay.
Yes.
So then we did, so then our part was correct, because this notification that was sent to the vendor, not to you, not to us.
I don't get a notification that they didn't ask for the invoice.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much for the
Thank you. Thank you,
clarification,
ma'am.
because it was a little bit confusing there, and I wanted to make sure we don't leave confused issues on the table, because that's when people get lost on
Thank you,
us.
ma'am.
Mr. Fisher,
Yes, ma'am.
so through the whole process, we the district have to bid out, correct?
Yes,
We
ma'am.
have to bid out the project. So then, once we bid out the project, you have no communication with the vendor at all? There's no contact, no communication, no knowledge, just through the process of the, I just want to know what contact, what communication is there? Because I find it very hard to believe that we just bid and then we don't know what the vendors, what's going on or we don't have any feedback. How could that be that we can't get any information from them? We have to have the vendor has to come and say, hey, we have a problem. Or, I mean, you know, I just, and I understand that the work is, there's a lot of, it entails a lot. I understand. Forms, and if you miss out on something, they send it back to you, and then you got to send it back. There's a process. I understand that. But at what time do you drop the vendor completely without no communication?
Well, again, the Form 470 is an announcement to many vendors that we're asking for these items. The 28-day rule, we wait for the solicitation. The Form 471 is the actual application that we've chosen the vendor, and then we go. Then it's a selective review, so I deal with what I call the auditors, which is your PIA review for 2 years in this case, currently. And then we get a funding commitment decision letter from the vendor, from USAC, and then I let them know about the Form 486. You've allowed me these dollar amounts associated to these eligible goods and services, and we say yes we want or no we don't want, and there is a discrepancy there because I may not need all the things that I asked for at that time. Then and only then does an announcement come from USAC that these were the eligible goods and services that the Brownsville Independent School District is requesting insofar as total dollars and commence the operation of installation. So from that point on, after 2 years, a year and a half in some cases, then I do have correspondence with the vendor at that point about what campuses are going to be installed first. We're going to be working after 5 until 1 in the morning, whatever those things are in order to get that done. E-rate will allow them 1 year for the installation of all the equipment, turnkey of everything that we asked for, and then there's a deadline that they have to be able to install these products, goods, and services. During that time, I'm sure that I'm to believe that the vendor is saying, okay, Fisherhead, Longoria, Hannah, and Porter, and here are all the invoices they want redeemed of those from USAC. So I'm certain that the vendor gets with them as they install these items, and they're seeking payment in increments until they get everything installed by the deadline. So I guess after the Form 486 is filed and the purchase orders are issued is when we start dealing with the vendor.
Under the service providers like GaggleNet, SmartCom Telephone, NetSpan, Time Warner, Southern Bell, AT&T, and Kalins, they submit their original request amount, which is, they all have different amounts.
Correct.
And they're the ones that are the providers, service providers.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, but through the process, you still have communication throughout the year, throughout the term of whatever needs to be submitted through USAC and through the, you know, whatever, because USAC submits the information to TPESC to make sure that whatever funding goes out, it's posted or it's going to be documented somewhere.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, because you have three entities. You have the Federal Communication Commission, you have USAC, and then you have the TPESC. So they all have the information where it's what's transpiring from one thing, you know, from one school, or
Understood.
the wiring, of
Yes, ma'am.
whatever it's needed. Okay. Okay, then, but you never drop the vendor then. You still have communication with the
I have
vendor.
to and to take that a step further, ma'am, you're right, but a step further, in this case, a lot of those vendors that you spoke of, we have service from them from prior years. So, yes, I have to keep, because of those are vendors that we've dealt with for the past 10 years. So, yes, you're right. Over the years, I do correspond with these vendors. Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fisher. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Any more questions? Any other questions? Dr. Saavedra? Dr. Saavedra will go ahead.
Mr. Weaver, and we're okay with the application for 210, because I think, I used to work on the E-rate, so I think it came around.
you.
So I know the process. But it came around in February, no, February, March?
No, it
early-
actually is a deadline for Form 471 this year is
Coming-
March the 24th,
March,
4th
okay,
at
coming
midnight.
up.
Yes, ma'am.
I knew it was either February or March.
Thank you, ma'am.
You got,
Mr. Fisher?
Yes, sir.
Can you remind our audience how long you've been dealing with this E-rate situation here in this district?
When I got hired, sir, in this capacity in 1998-99 school year.
Okay. And through all these years, have you ever had any problems with the audits or any audit that's coming through our system?
I get nervous, but for the most part, no.
Thank you, sir. We so appreciate what you do for us.
My hat's off to you, sir, because
Thank
it
you.
is a monumental task.
Very much.
That notebook really is small.
Yes, compared.
Compared to everything, every document that goes in there.
I do appreciate your hard work, sir. I know you're dedicated to what you do.
Thank you, sir.
And stay healthy for us, please.
We're on item 2 right here.
we now go to item number 2, presentation of notification of allowance contingency fund change order, Hannah and Porter High Schools, new science buildings additions, contingency fund, contingency change order number 2. Mr. Springston?
Thank you, Madam President. If I have any questions from the board, I'll be happy to get your answers for you.
Any questions?
No, the only comment is I was glad to see the decrease.
Yes, ma'am.
It's always nice to see a decrease.
Now we go to item B, board calendars. Mr. Springston?
Believe it or not, today's March 1st, thank goodness. We are into March, going into April. Today was a testing day. For those people that are in the house, I see a few principals that are here. I know you've worked extremely hard getting your kids prepared I sent you a little reminder yesterday about keeping that focus and making sure that our kids get that education that they deserve, and I appreciate your dedication. We do have a budget committee meeting that's coming up this Thursday at 5:30 here in the boardroom. Want to remind everyone in the audience that the end of our fourth 6 weeks is this Friday coming up, with only 12 more weeks of school left. The year seems to be going by very fast. We do have open house coming up next week, elementary, 5:30 to 7:30. On the 7th, middle school open house is 5:30 to 7:30 on Tuesday the 8th. We have high school open house from 5:30 to 7:30 on the 10th. We have SAT testing that is coming up on the 12th. That'll do our calendar for the moment.
Thank you, Mr. Springston.
Ms. Plessis,
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Springston, and we have a chess tournament coming up on Saturday at Garza.
At Garza?
I found out now.
Okay.
Garza.
Thank you. We'll now go to public audience, and I'm going to ask all the visitors and the public audience to please do not be disrespectful as we're going into the public audience sign-in sheet. This is a time for citizen, staff, or students to provide their comments to the board. Statement and questions from the audience will not be permitted during other portions of the meeting, so please let us hear from you now if you have comments to present. To have your comments heard tonight, your name and the subject matter of your comments must appear on the sign-in sheet, which is located in the rear of the meeting room. Each speaker will be limited to 5 minutes to complete his or her comments. With all due courtesy, the presiding officer will strictly enforce that time limit. If a group of people want to be heard on this same topic, the board asks that they designate a spokesperson to avoid needless repetition. The board has adopted rules to preclude the abuse of open forum by, for example, anyone uselessly repeating the same comment or complaint meeting after meeting. All participants must understand that if your comment in the judgment of the presiding officer constitutes a complaint against an employer or officer, the presiding officer will interrupt and ask you to stop and direct you to proceed with the BISD's formal grievance procedures, be that DGBA, FNG, or GF local. With those cautions in mind, we will now be glad to hear the general comments. It'll be Hagan, Superintendent Employment Status.
Great. Good afternoon, Madam President, Mr. Superintendent, members of the BISD Trustees Board, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Andy Hagan, and I'm a businessman and a member of our community who have served and are currently serving on several local boards, including the Boy Scouts of America Rio Grande Council, Rotary Club of Brownsville Sunrise, the Rio Grande Valley Educational Public Broadcasting, Inc., and the Brownsville Public Library Foundation. Much of my free time over the past 20 years has been focused on community service with an emphasis on the children who live in our area. Recently, I had the privilege of participating as principal of the day at Perez Elementary. It was a wonderful experience. I gained a better understanding of the importance and need for the continued collaboration of the BISD board, district representatives, teachers, faculty, staff, our business and community leaders, and parents in the education and development of our children. As the saying goes, it really does take a village, and in this instance, a community to raise a child. I was concerned to hear after the Principal for a Day luncheon that the school board agenda scheduled today under the closed meeting section 10, personal matters, item number 23 and 24, would deal or would include discussion of employment status and possible investigation of our superintendent, Brett Springston. It was initiated at the very same time the community was celebrating our district's successes. What a shame. Under the leadership of Brett Springston, the assistant superintendents, the campus leaders, and our teachers, the students of BISD have achieved the Texas Educational Agency's 2010 state recognition or recognized district by meeting the absolute standard criteria. In addition, 52 BISD schools, 100% of all campuses, are rated exemplary and recognized in 2010 in accordance to the state accountability system. This recognition follows the Broad Award that was bestowed on our district in 2008. Lastly, 3 BISD high schools, Hanna, Lopez, and Pace, are recipients of $18 million in Texas Title I Priority Schools grants. Only 70 of such prestigious and competitive grants were awarded in Texas this year. These accomplishments are a clear indication that the current BISD leadership continues to improve the overall achievement levels of our students. It's no secret that there's a budget shortfall looming over us in Texas. We certainly need to develop a plan of action to face the many challenges that will confront us in the upcoming years. With an upward climb and an all-time high in student enrollment reported at 49,155 students in 2009 and 10, this will make next year's outlook even more challenging than ever to try and strive to achieve the district's continued overall success with fewer or limited resources. As a citizen of this community and as a taxpayer, I want to make sure that you as board members are mindful that we need continuity of our educational services. We do not need to elect a new superintendent every 2 years or after each election. This costs the district more money, which in turn costs us more in taxes. More importantly, such changes in leadership have a negative impact on the district's focus to ensure the continued success of our students. The Texas Education Code, Section 11201, clearly states that the district will be penalized monetarily for early dismissal of a superintendent. We cannot afford to be penalized or to lose the continuity of leadership in our district. I'm asking for your reconsideration of this agenda item, which is a no-win situation for all concerned. Let us work with our current district superintendent and his staff and move
Mr.
the success
Hagan,
of our student body to a higher level, 100% exemplary. Let's really be all about children, as the BISD model says.
You got 1 minute left, Mr. Hagan.
I'm finished. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker will be Jill Graves.
My name is Jill Graves, and yes, the topic is ethics. At the last board meeting, when I was here, I mentioned an organization. It's called TASB, TASB.org. It's a fascinating little site you can go to. In fact, you can even check out what the board ethics should be. A couple of things. One of them, and I gave each one of you a copy, and I know at least one person got it emailed. I will make no personal promise or take private action that may compromise my performance of my responsibilities. I will respect the majority decision as the decision of the board. I will base my decisions on fact rather than supposition, opinion, or public favor. I will refuse to surrender judgment to any individual or group at the expense of the district as a whole. I will consistently uphold all applicable laws, rules, policy, governance, and procedure. I will keep confidential information that is privileged by law or that will be needlessly harm the district if disclosed. And another one I'd like to point out, I will avoid personal involvement in activities the board has delegated to the superintendent. I would like to point out, Dr. Escobedo, I appreciate you bringing up the E-rate. Since last Monday, I brought a nice little spreadsheet that somebody put on Facebook. This person also claimed that she had personal copies of checks and that she would provide them to this person on Facebook also. I don't appreciate, whatever the day-to-day duties of this district is, to have somebody take stuff and go give it to another person to publish on Facebook. One of you did it. And I did check the person's friends on Facebook. Some of you, at least 2 of the 6 are her friends. I checked another one, of which 4 of the 6 are friends. Please, one of the biggest problems is when you come and you decide to mess in the day-to-day governance of this district. When it becomes I, instead of we as a district, you are definitely divided. And I would appreciate those of you who say we are a team of 8 to please work as a team instead of individuals messing in the day-to-day business. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Graves. We'll now call out Ernesto de Leon.
Good afternoon, Honorable Board of Trustees, Mr. Springston, ladies and gentlemen in the audience. My name is Ernesto de Leon. Come here as a public citizen interested in protecting our taxes and see how they are spent wisely. Right now, I'm on the Oversight Committee for the bond that was spent over $100 million, and I proudly served on that committee. Bond Oversight Committee. As a member of that board, I was placed there several years ago by Pat Lehman, who's no longer on the board, and then replaced on that board by Ms. Katy Presas. While there, I'm sure you all are familiar with Carol Manzano project. Before when I saw the drawing of the plans, I immediately called it to the attention of Tapia and the rest of the board of the committee. We have a problem. You need an exit through the back because you cannot, for those two schools, come back on the front with the Salomon Ortiz about 6 or 8 blocks away. One committee member laughed at me, said, Mr. De Leon, are you an engineer? No. Are you an architect? No. I said, but I tell you what, it's gonna cost the taxpayers money. It cost us about $300,000. And you know why you won't see it? You'll never see it. Because they said, well, you know, we were gonna put awnings, aluminum awnings on the buildings. We're not gonna look, that's expensive. We're not gonna do that no more. We're gonna save $80-something thousand there. By the way, the brick, we're not gonna use the same brick. We're gonna use a different brick. We're gonna save some more. And oh, by the way, we're gonna put bleachers on the football field. No longer. And then we had to, Tapia come back about a year later, year and a half, says, by the way, TxDOT won't give us permission to enter, exit on Elton Gloor unless we find something to the back. Mr. De Leon was right. Too late. Too late. And I made it aware, Superintendent Gonzalez and several of the board members here. No, there was nothing, how would I say, they didn't pay any attention to it. And sometimes they criticize some people for coming out and voicing problems that we see. Some people just don't want to hear it. And a lot of people here have it, in other words, criticize Ms. Presas for studying and researching and trying to do what's right. I commend you, Ms. Presas, for that. Sometimes we are not appreciated. And oh, by the way, on the Veterans Memorial, Mr. Tapia says, hey, we got a problem. We're 97% finished, and by the way, we don't have enough water pressure in case of fire. And it's on videotape, ladies and gentlemen. I say, hey, what's the deal? You spent close to $70 million of taxpayers' money and you didn't know that? Oh, no problem. We got it covered. How much is it gonna cost? About $1 million, $1.5 million. Did you contact PUB? Oh, yeah, Mr. Leon, but they're more expensive. Wrong. I contacted Mr. Brusiak the next day. Out of those 15 members, I was the only one, not bragging, but the truth. And they took care of the problem. But it goes on and on. If we don't check and see what's happening, ladies and gentlemen, we got problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Leon. We now go to Mr. George Borrego.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
My name is George Borrego, and I proudly represent the Association of Brownsville Educators, and I pay a lot of taxes in this community, too. I don't know to whom I should address this, but there's a lot of people waiting outside that are not being allowed in, and I've seen a lot of people in here before, and it would be nice if they would be allowed to come into the boardroom. But like I said, I don't know who to address on that issue. The first thing I want to talk about is the canceled meeting. There was a board meeting scheduled at 1 o'clock on a Monday when a lot of concerned taxpayers, as well as employees of the district, could not attend because it was at 1 o'clock. Why was it scheduled at that hour? Some of us wanted to be here. Some of us took half a day off to be here. Others took their lunch hour and didn't eat. Some of us can afford not to eat, but nonetheless, they didn't eat. And then the board meeting was canceled on extremely short notice. 3 of the board members did not even know that the meeting was canceled because they were sitting over there waiting for the meeting to start. This is unprofessional. This is not right. And it should not happen again. You were elected by the community, and the community has a right to attend the meetings at the right time, at proper times where employees as well as community members can attend. If it isn't broken, don't fix it. Mr. Hagan referred to that very well, and I'm not going to repeat it. If it is not broken, don't fix it. Mr. Brett Springston is our superintendent. He's our quarterback. Every time we put an item on the agenda about his consideration of employment, that's like sacking the quarterback and taking the focus off the kids, the employees, and the direction of this district. And it should not be happening because our direction is already in the right direction. Leave him alone and let him do his job. If at the end, of his term you don't want him, then you don't renew him. You have that consummate right, but at the right time. This is not the right time. Thank you.
We now have Adelina Garcia.
Mr. Springsteen, board members, Madam President, I withdraw my name from public forum.
Thank you, Ms. Garcia. Now we go to Rosie Gorena. Read Across America.
Good evening. My name is Rosie Gorena, and I'm the proud librarian of Veterans High School. This past weekend, a group of us, educators and students, took to the streets, and we had the opportunity to march for literacy during our Charter Days parade. Read Across America is a nationwide initiative promoting literacy, and it is sponsored by the National Education Association, TSTA, and our local chapter, the Association of Brownsville Educators. I would like to continue this celebration by hosting a community event during open house next Thursday at Veterans High School. I come before you this evening with an invitation that I would like to read to you. Good evening to one and all. The Cat in the Hat is here to make a call. To all of you young at heart, please come partake and have a ball. The event is soon, so don't forget. The cat will be waiting. You can count on that.
The place is Veterans High, and the library will be on open house night celebrating literacy. So come join our party. All the cats will be there, dancing and reading and enjoying this affair. Thank you very much and have a nice evening.
Thank you, Ms. Gorena. We now have Mr. Patrick Hammonds.
Good evening, Madam President, Superintendent Springsteen, members of the board. What a wonderful turnout we have tonight. I see retired administrators, retired teachers. I see members from the community. I see my brothers and sisters from the Association of Brownsville educators present, and it's nice to see the room filled up tonight. I know Bill don't touch it, right? Bill counts how many times I touch the microphone. A couple of things real quick. You've already heard from the community on part of your closed session agenda, whether they're not in favor of it. You already heard from our board, from our president, who's also expressed our concern about this. There is a time and a place for everything. 2 weeks ago, you had at the last board meeting, you agreed into closed session, and unless Mr. Gary Long from the Herald here to my left misreported it, that you were going to work as a team of 8 on his evaluation. You also agreed at that meeting to set up an internal audit with Margie on the qualified school construction bonds. And yet a little over a week later, where there, as George mentioned, there was a meeting, a special call board meeting, to look at placing the superintendent on administrative leave. What is the rush to judgment? Let Margie do her job. My impression from listening to all of you is you're very impressed with her. Okay? Same thing as George said. Let him work his contract. If his contract is going to run out and you don't want to renew it, that is your right as the board. At the same time, okay, if you go through the same process that we went with the previous superintendent and you cannot find due cause, then the cause comes out to about $1.6 million when you look at the payout to Mr. Springston, the fine to TEA, and then you have to look at an interim replacement or replacement at the same salary or higher. And just for a little information trivia, yesterday it was noticed that they were discussing a cap on superintendent's pay in the state of Texas. I don't know if Mr. Springston's for that or not, but just for your information. My job with the association is I'm the conduit from the association to the board. Okay? And just like you get phone calls from constituents, I get phone calls from people either in our organization. Sometimes I get phone calls from board members, and a lot of times I get calls from the community. And we're confused. We are confused. You did call that special call board meeting for 1 o'clock on a Monday. You did it on very short notice. Where our confusion is you had 3 people here, and the person who called the meeting had shown up, you would have had a quorum. This would not be on the agenda tonight. So I don't know what the policy is on that. I have not had time to do the research, but I would think that if you place an item on the agenda, that the person who called the item to the agenda should be present. Okay. I've gotten some phone calls saying that I only listen to one side of the board, okay, that I am showing favoritism and I'm not being bipartisan. My job as representative for the Association of Brownsville Educators and talking to the board and coming to these meetings is to represent the best interest of 4,200 plus employees. I do not have a personal agenda with any of you at all. I don't have the right to have an agenda with any of you at all. What I do is I have given all of you my card. I have requested meetings with you, with our association. About half of you have met with us and talked to us, and roughly a little less than half of you have not. As the person who was giving me the feedback, and I agree, I am listening to the people that are having a conversation with us who represent 4,200 plus employees. We would love to hear the other side, but we cannot do that if you do not agree to meet with us. How can I hear the other side if you will not meet with us? How can our leadership of our group hear
Mr.
other
Hammonds,
concerns?
your time is up. How much time? 1 minute? Well, I have probably I'm ahead. Go ahead. You have 1 minute left. Sorry.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. The other thing I want to talk about on that 1 o'clock time, and I also want to make notice, there's also members of the EBC here okay? I see many of my colleagues on the EBC at this meeting tonight also, is that all meetings, all board meetings, we would like to see held after hours. So any and all employees could attend, like the board insurance meetings, which are always full of information. So we hope to be able to sit down and have a conversation and a dialogue with each and every one of you, okay? But we can't make you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hemmings. We now have Mrs. Mary Ray. Concerns?
Madam President, Superintendent, board members. It is no secret to anyone that some board members are letting their personal feelings get in the way of carrying out the responsibilities they were entrusted with when they were elected. It is okay not to like each other, but please don't bring BISD down in the process. We ask all of you to put your differences aside and work together as a team. This is a time of financial distress. We are about to lose our most valuable assets, which is our teachers. And if we lose teachers, students will pay the price. So it is time to stop worrying about your personal feelings and start working for the students. We are demanding financial accountability from you. It is not right that this board continues to look the other way and not hold anyone accountable. If administration has failed to do their job, it is called incompetence. And if an elected official fails to hold someone accountable, they are just as guilty. With the exception of 2 new trustees, all of you were here before. So if anyone wants to remove our board president, and then we remove you all. We voted you in, we can vote you out. Let me say, the personality has nothing to do with running a budget of this size. Compromises have to be made. I know the compromises will make some of us very, very unhappy, but compromise is needed indeed. We all know that within the last few weeks, some very costly mistakes were found. How many more do you have to find before taking action? How many? And before we go broke? Or do we go broke first and then take action? You tell me.
Thank you, Mrs. Ray. We now go to closed session for items number 23, 24, and 37. It is now 7:20. We will reconvene from the executive session. As per item number 23 and 24, there is no action taken.
Is Ms. Presas?
Yes.
Does that mean that at this point is now mute? This point in time?
Michelle, can you,
I think it means that there's going to be no action taken on this at all. I mean, it's moot in that sense.
Okay.
we now go to item number 37, board evaluation discussion with possible action on board president reorganization. Ms. Peña?
Yes, after careful consideration and unrest that I see within our district and within some of our public and our teachers and our students, even students, I would like to request that we have a reorganization and make a motion to reorganize the president position. I'd like to move that we reorganize the president position.
Do I have a second? All those in favor? All those against? Nay. 4 nays, 4 against, 3 for.
And may I just say, Madam President, you know, I wasn't necessarily against your idea, Mrs. Peña. You know, we may reorganize in the future, we may not, I don't know. What I did have a concern was the reasoning that you expressed in executive session. Obviously, I'm not gonna talk details about it, but what you discussed, what you brought up in executive session did not, in my opinion, was not valid, did not merit a reorganization. Perhaps there are other reasons to reorganize that I will agree with, but not those specific ones that you brought out in executive. And because of that, I respectfully vote against your item.
Mrs. Presas, if I may? Dr. Escobedo, if there's other reasons that you would feel that does merit a reorganization, then I would feel that it was your obligation to the community, because we are not our president's followers, but our community's leaders. That would be the time to bring up what it is, because if something is and exists and needs to be done, and as hard as it was for me, because believe me when I tell you, this was a very hard thing for me to do. And I'm not gonna convince other people of that, but I know in my heart where I stand, and I stand for the community before I stand for anything else, because I take care of the mass before I take care of the few. And if in fact, sir, you do feel that there was something, I would have so appreciated that you would have shared that with me, but I respect your opinion, sir.
Thank you.
Also, so in
Madam
front of us,
President.
go ahead, Mr. Aguilar.
Well, I also respect Mr. Escobedo and everybody's opinion. However, it seems to me that if there's a concern and we can share with it, we insinuate things, and then we don't have the courage to tell them, you see, then what are we doing as board members? It might not be a ballot. It's very simple for me to come and say here, you know, for that reason, Ms. Peña, I don't think whatever we discuss is not good enough. But if you have expressed concern about it, you know, there's something wrong with it. So that's just why I voted with Mrs. Peña. There's some concern, but we just want to be upfront with it.
Thank you, Mr. Aguilar.
We're concerned about things that has happened at the spur of the moment. All kind of reports. Seems that sometimes, even though somebody is going to get offended, it looks like there's a witch hunt in here. And then definitely, that's not the role of ours. Seems like everyone who wants to take a place and take a shot at our superintendent or administration. Board members expressed disrespectful to our administration. And then again, let's not tolerate it. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because I didn't discuss it behind closed doors. And I think I have the right to say why. If you're asking why, I'm going to tell you why.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms.
Go- Go ahead, Mr. Colunga.
Thank you. I also wanted to comment on the basis for my vote. I would have the same concern that Mrs. Peña. Also, in evaluating the leadership of the board, it is necessary to consider the communication that exists between board president and superintendent. Board president is the liaison with administration and communicates with board members the issues that occur within administration that need to be addressed by board members at meetings, and based on the role of the board president, I would that would explain my vote as far as why I would vote for reorganization. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Colunga. Dr. Saavedra, go
Ms.
ahead.
Presas, and for the community to understand that I think we had people come up on public audience because we do serve as role models to the community. And part of being a role model is to be able to work together and get along. We see that in schools. We teach that to our children. that when you work in cooperative groups, not always would the groups get along. But it's up to us to be able to facilitate and make sure that our students do work together and that eventually the outcome is positive. So this is one of the reasons why I think as a role model to the community that we don't just get upset and reorganize every time we don't agree with each other, because it is good to disagree. That's what makes America great. But I think that we have to understand that as role models, we work together and we work on these kinks, and there will be time and time again where we will disagree. Big issues, heavy issues come up. But I think in the long run, we all have the same purpose, and that's to make sure and ensure that the students at BISD get the best leadership that is out there possible, that the leadership, as we can see, it is a process, and that accountability is high on this board's issues. And that accountability is good because it keeps us on tab. It keeps us on task as to what, just like we hold the students accountable. Right now, they're being held accountable with the testing, and teachers are being held accountable. So I think the leadership for us to see that that's part of the process. And in working with the process, we have to work together. And so I think that in reorganizing, just because we disagree at times, this is why we come into executive session, to be able to put that out and to discuss and to evaluate not only the board, but the administration as well.
Ms. Garcia. Ma'am, I don't have any problem with being role models. Thank you, ma'am. I believe you're correct. We're supposed to be role models, and you say we're supposed to be working together. But when the leadership comes at the regular meeting with materials and things that there's not being shared by anyone else by themselves, and then you yourself also say this is new to me, then what kind of a leadership are we expressing ourselves?
But sir, we
Hold
have
on,
brought it
I'll
up.
let you talk.
Mr.
Thank
Aguilar.
Thank you, ma'am. And then, of course, we will go through those things. And I grant you, I respect the 4 3s, and I will go with it because had a good teacher in math that told me 4 votes is the board decision. And I've always done that. Does not allow me to, does not prevent me to tell you that I don't see being role models when we insult the administration in public, or sometimes they insult the public entities that come to us to the podium and they get insulted. That I do not know. I appreciate that. Also, all these walking agendas, all these little notes, stick to the plan. They got something out there, all this, and I have proof on that. That is wrong, Mrs. Dr. Savera. You might not know this, but I do know. I sit here, I see this. And that is why, if we were to work as a team, and you all advocate, you say you all because you are the one who said it, let's go forward. And every item we have done in this last month or so is like going forward. It's going forward. It starts with the Looney consultant. You know, what is that going forward when you dismiss someone that has saved the district $9 million? How can we go forward? Every item that you bring here is an indication that going forward. I think we're going backwards. Thank you, ma'am.
Dr. Savera, did you?
Well, I just want to say that part of it is, again, we disagree, and we're entitled to disagree, and there will be decisions. But I think that we have to understand, too, that yes, we bring on notice, and we've done it when we evaluate, and we've had the evaluation on the agenda for the board to be able to move forward. And as Dr. Escobedo said, probably somewhere along the line, the reorganization is going to be probably inevitable if it continues, and I think that we've brought that already to the attention. But I think at this time, this is where we feel, and we're entitled to that vote.
Ms. Longoria, go ahead.
And one thing I want to state perfectly clear for the record and reiterate, my request for reorganization has nothing to do with being able to get along with you. Because I can dislike you. I can totally disagree with who you are. But as a human being and my beliefs and my faith, I will honor you every time you're right. Because liking you is not part of the equation for me. So when I bring something up, it's not because we disagree. It's not because I don't like you. I bring something up because there's some legal questions that I want to know how this happened and nothing was done. But I respect my board's final vote. I have to. And I will continue working with Ms. Presas because, believe it or not, I work with people because I don't dislike people. I just don't have that in me. I might just like you for 30 seconds and it gets over because life is too short to go around hating people, and it takes too much energy to do that. It's a lot easier to be happy with people. And if I do something to embarrass or insult someone, I apologize. When I feel strongly about something, I bring it out. This is happening. Is this okay? It has nothing to do because I get angry with you because people who know me, and I mean really know me, know I don't operate like that. So I had a question. It was posed. They didn't agree with it. I totally respect that. And I'm here to work with her and everyone else. And I mean that sincerely. If you know me, you know that's the truth. So thank you.
Also, any other questions? I'd like to share this with the public. You know, 2 years ago, there was incidents that were happening without some of us board members even being consulted. And it's a shame. It really is. Things were done not even thinking about it, but there was a plan because we were never notified. We were always told when we were here at the last minute. I did not agree to a lot of the incidents. I did not agree the way our finance was being run either. There's a lot of fiscal responsibility that board members have, just like administration does. And administration needs to understand that when we question things about fiscal management, it's because that is part of our responsibility. And we cannot continue to run a district by depleting the fund balance. That's not the way we should do business. And for the past 2 years, there was money that was spent. When I came onto this district, there was 140-some million, 148 million or something like that. We had a very, very hefty fund balance. At this point in time, we're being told we still have 76 million. How could that be that as of last year, we still have 76 million when we have to make sure that we have to be making POs and we have to be doing expenditures on a month-to-month basis? We just approved a bond item, 26 million. There were some issues, there are some concerns, serious issues. Serious issues. That's why that investigation is going to have to take place. There's other concerns. And let me tell you, we're going about it in the right direction. We're not hiring outside attorneys to spend thousands and thousands of dollars. We're having our own staff and our own counsel to work on it and gather the information that's needed. And you know, some of you might not realize and understand where we're coming from, but we have concerns. And sometimes we just need to compromise. And we're here to work together, and we're here for the public, and we're here mainly for the students of this community. Because it is our responsibility that the fiscal management, that every dollar that we can go and get from the federal government or from the state, that we can bring it back to our students in our classrooms. Because when we were told by administration that even if the worst case scenario would be, some of us here on the board will be the very first time in history that we will have to let go of people if administration continues to say that we have to let go of our first-year teachers, our second-year teachers, and our third-year teachers, because that is what we've been told. That the number can be anywhere between 200 to 700. And I think Mr. Springston told me the day before the meeting, I saw you upstairs, and you said you were even, man, we might need to let go of the first, second, and third-year teachers, would be up to 700. And when we did our math, that we asked how many teachers were hired during the process, that's basically the number that you gave us that day of the last budget meeting. So we have concerns, we really do. And these concerns have been for the past 5-6 months because we still haven't been able to get a budget together. Other districts are already working with their own budgets. They're already on the third and fourth draft. We're still working around us. I mean, our fund balance, because obviously we haven't gotten the actual numbers. So there's serious issues and serious concerns. And I know that I have in front of me a little compass, and I would like to read this to the community and to the public in front of me. When traveling in unfamiliar territory, explorers frequently consult their compasses to ensure they have not lost their way or are not headed in the direction away from their destination. The value of a compass is that it is defined one direction, north. All other directions can be determined and selected or rejected based on the knowledge. As educators, we also need to consult our professional compass. Rather than showing north, our compass needs to point directly at helping students learn every issue, every decision, and every expenditure of an organizational resource. Human or financial must be judged on its consistency with the point of our compass. If we are clear and consistent in our pursuit of and support for student learning, we can monitor our direction and adjust our course with relative ease. Like explorers, we need to frequently consult our compass and adjust our course accordingly. However, our compass is not something we can carry in our pocket. We must keep it in our hearts and in our mind. And I think that if we can all learn to understand our responsibilities as board members, we're going to do okay, and we're going to be all right. And like Dr. Saavedra said, we'll be making decisions sometimes that people might not be happy, but those are the decisions that we're going to have to make. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Aguilar.
Definitely, everybody wants to go forward. A compass is very simple, but where's the magnetic fields coming from? See, what happens is this. What happens is this. We talk about fund balance. Every person in the budget committee has explained to you about the fund balance. What has happened, a lot of information some of you give is half-truths. That needs to stop. We have a person have been doing for years. The fund balance explained to you last time was $88 million. And they also, the audit, Mr. Costco explained to you that some of the fund balance, there was 100 and plus, was also because some of that money included the money that was earmarked for some of the projects we had. Isn't that correct, Mr. Fuller? So you see, that's just why it fluctuates. You have 100 plus, but then that money that is in there is earmarked. It's not our problem. It's not our fault that some of you people do not understand the financial status or how the auditor explained. Why do you think Mr. Costco is not here? Is it, why am I have to explain it? They tell you that we spend some fund balance. 6 of us in here, including you, Enrique, is that you know that we took some money out of that fund balance to give teachers pay raises. Isn't that correct, Mr. Fuller? And so the administration said, we have a plan to put all that money back because we want to go back again. That is correct. Now, that is what a story of fund balance. And we all want to know what's right for the district. We all want to do this. The budget, we just allow the administration to work on it instead of bringing all this, do that, and all of a sudden, I'm not pleased with it. So, yes, I'm willing to work together. But let's be honest up front. Don't just throw figures around and to make it look that something's wrong with the district. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Aguilar.
Madam President, may we move on?
Yes. Ms.
Yeah.
Longoria has-
Mr. Aguilar, I just wanted to refresh everybody's memory around here. As per Mr. Coscos, he did advise administration not to dip into the fund balance anymore because we only had 70 days in the fund balance. And we have continued dipping into the fund balance. We just have some more agenda items here, paying contractors, architects out of the fund balance. And so we're not the ones that are making up things, you know, we're not the ones that are hiding things or
Ma'am,
numbers.
that money's earmarked. Sir, all this that she's talking about that we have bills, isn't that money earmarked to pay those bills?
Madam President, may we move on?
We're going to go
please?
ahead and move on. We have a budget meeting.
Mr.
Thank you, Dr.
Oh, one more thing.
Not finished.
If we have such a hefty fund balance, then why is administration proposing cuts? Can you answer that for me?
You want me to answer that? Because we don't want to cut down the fund balance once we have it at
oh.
the aid.
But you want to cut personnel. You want to cut teachers and
No, we're not.
personnel.
We do
Nobody
not,
said
we are
anything.
not
We
going to
have a
cut
budget
teachers.
meeting
That's
Thursday.
what
Please,
administration
we're not
is
gonna cut
proposing. That's what
We have a budget
administration is
meeting Thursday.
proposing.
We can discuss it then.
Let's go ahead and
Ms.
move
Perez,
on to the
please,
next.
may I
Ms. Peña, everybody's had their opportunity. I'm sorry.
We're not going to
We're
cut
gonna have
teachers.
to-
I'm going to say that. We're
Okay.
not going to scare the district.
Okay.
And
It's
we're
on
not
the
going to scare
list.
the community. No, ma'am. We are not going to do that.
We have a budget meeting coming
I wanna repeat
Thursday.
everyone that.
We have a, okay, we're going to move on. I'm sorry that I have to cut everybody, but I think it's best to move on. We have a budget meeting Thursday, and yeah, we'll just wait for the budget meeting on Thursday.
Item 6, Madam
On
President.
item 6, ladies, please, ladies, recommend approval of the 2010-2011 state adoption of instructional materials to be implemented during the 2011-2012 school year in the areas of pre-K system, handwriting grade 1 through 3rd, spelling grades 1 through 5th, English language arts grades 2 to 8, Spanish language arts grades 2nd through 5th, English as a second language ESL grades K through 8th, and English levels 1 through 4, grades 9 through 12, in BISD schools. Items to be purchased are subject to the district's needs and funding. Dr. Saavedra, I believe you had a question on this item.
Yes, Mr. Springston, if I may address, or whomever you think I just want the process for the adoption briefly, maybe explain to the community, because state-adopted materials are very critical to the district, and I want to make sure that the public understands the process of the selection of the adopted textbooks and instructional materials.
Yes, ma'am, and we do have quite an extensive project. Ms. Pena, would you like to explain that process, please?
Yes, sir. We also have Mr. Julio Martinez, representative of the Staff Development Office. But if I may, Mrs. Cata Presas Garcia, members of the board, Mr. Springston, it is my pleasure to tell you that we have state and local policies that mandate the voting of textbook adoption. Each campus shall have a representative on the textbook committee for each one of the schools. We have a district committee, and every school is represented. Advisory members are trained on voting procedures, and the representative is responsible to set a voting date at the campus. All campus representatives shall conduct a campus vote for all of the voters. In other words, if I'm a representative of the first grade, I make sure and assure that all of the first grade teachers see the selection of materials, see the manipulatives and all the extras that come with my textbook basal, so that my teachers can make a good decision. All of the teachers are involved in publisher events, in hearings, in committee meetings, and then we make a vote. When there is a 51% of that vote, that is submitted to the district committee, and the district committee then tallies every school's vote for the basal. There again, we have a 51% that will make it a clear and definite decision that that is going to be our textbook of adoption. Campus reports are ranked based on the campus vote. Ranks are tallied and totaled, and the majority is established by the company receiving 51% of the votes. We did have one I believe it was a kindergarten adoption that we had that did not, we had a tie. And so we had to go back to a second procedure until we get that percentage. And clearly they were the textbook that was adopted. And after it is voted on and ratified by the board this evening, we will submit it to TEA. And we plan to have a meeting on March the 9th at CAB so that we can invite the campuses back, the representatives and the administration back, so that we may present all of the adoptions and all of the auxiliary materials and all the supplemental manipulatives that come with it.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Pena.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a motion for approval?
Move to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Peña, second by Dr. Saavedra. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 7-0. We now go to item number 12, recommend approval to renew our annual TASB membership and TASB Legal Assistant Fund and pay dues in the amount of $11,500 for 2011 calendar year. Ms. Longoria?
Yeah, do we have to pay a late fee since I noticed that it's, the dues were due back in January 31st?
No, ma'am.
No late fees? And this is gonna cover the whole 2011 calendar year?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that was all, thank you.
Do I have a
Move to
motion for
approve.
this item?
The reason why I say that was because I see there was a notice that was sent to us. We didn't receive the first. I noticed it was stamped on, that we received it on February the 18th. Yes.
So we have a motion by Ms. Peña. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Saavedra. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 7-0. Item number 13, discuss consideration possible action to keep board member Catalina Plesas Garcia from participating in any discussion, settlement, negotiation, strategy, decisions, and/or voting with regards to the pending litigation with HealthSmart and/or Ted Parker because of the obvious conflict of interest when they share the same attorney. Dr. Saavedra, did you have a question on that one?
No, that was, I don't know what
Oh.
the rationale was for that.
Oh, this item is, I'm sorry, Dr. Saavedra. This item is placed by Mr. Colunga. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. I wanted to address the phrasing on the conflict of interest in keeping board member Ms. Perez Garcia from participating in any discussion, settlement negotiations, strategy decisions, and voting regarding the pending litigation with HealthSmart. Basically, focusing on the information that was disclosed at the last meeting of the 15th February that we identified the attorney of record as Mr. John Barr, who has represented Ted Parker against the city of Lubbock. John Barr has also had a long attorney-client relationship with Ted Parker, and John Barr has represented HealthSmart, a HealthSmart entity in the past, and the district is currently suing Ted Parker and HealthSmart with the pending lawsuit. With that said, question one, how do we know that John Barr would not try to use his attorney-client relationship with a board member to defend his client, Ted Parker?
Go ahead, Mr. Michelle.
The, I think one guard is that he, as an outside counsel for the district, he has to go through either district personnel or me to get information that he would need in that lawsuit, and that they're separate lawsuits. I understand your concern, and that is what I think ACE Insurance, who selects counsel, considered that and took a look at that. But from a legal perspective, because it's not a legal conflict, because he's not representing HealthSmart in this lawsuit, and as he has represented to ACE Insurance, that he no longer represents Mr. Parker. And also, he's not the primary attorney, although it is his law firm. There's another attorney named Mr. Forrest, I believe, who's Nelson Forrest, who's the one who's representing Ms. Presas in the lawsuit.
Okay, continuing with second question, if John Barr is representing Ms. Presas individually, would he owe any duty to the district as an attorney if he represents her individually, even though the district has to pay the first $50,000 deductible to defend the board member?
Yeah, he does owe a duty to the district. First of all, it's the district that's engaging him, and also, Ms. Presas' position in that lawsuit, as I understand it from having read the pleadings, is that she was acting in her official capacity, a permissible way as a trustee, and so the defense is based on her acting as a board member, and he is acting as a lawyer for the district, unless and until it would be proven differently.
Okay, additional question on possible collusion. If a question ever arose, if there was collusion between the attorney of record, John Barr, Ms. Presas, and Ted Parker, would we be able to cross-examine John Barr about his conversations with Ms. Presas?
I suppose you could have a claim like that. I mean, would your, I guess what you're talking about there is collusion to reveal attorney-client privileged information that the district could bring an action. I think that would be a bit unusual. Usually people go before the state bar, you know, for disciplinary proceedings if they think the attorney has violated that, you know, the code of ethics.
And based on that question, a similar question would be if there were any allegations of collusion, would we be able to cross-examine Ms. Presas about a conversation with John Barr, or would that be protected by attorney-client privilege?
I mean, it may be protected by attorney-client privilege. You know, I think what you're talking about are the district's interests, you know, harmed in that sense. And when you're talking about the attorney-client privilege, the law that's out there is pretty clear that there's little that can be done to affect a board member's ability, you know, to seek information or to have representation. In fact, the only instance that's been recognized at all has been where a trustee has brought a lawsuit against other trustees with regard to their businesses as being school trustees. And only then has the Attorney General opined that you might be able to somehow prevent the board member from getting access or participate in meetings. But short of that, it's not permitted because the statute for board members gives them the right, you know, to attend meetings. And so you'd have to really just show some specific transgression like you're talking to. When you're talking about cross-examining, what it really means in the first instance is you've got to have a claim in order to be able to get to court to be able to do that. So it would mean that the board as a whole would have to determine that there was some sort of violation and bring an action at that point to do something of that nature.
In summary, we would never be able to cross-examine anyone involved in the attorney-client privilege as protected by that law. And mainly I have placed the item for discussion as to what can be done to protect the district in those type of discussions regarding the HealthSmart lawsuit.
Well, you know, the authorities that were discussing, that was really kind of the issue at hand, and essentially what the courts have said is only in the instance where really trustees are suing each other does that issue come up. I think what you have to rely on you know, both the lawyers and the clients following the law in terms of what's protected and not. And additionally, in this situation, you're talking about whether there's any common interest in the two lawsuits, which there doesn't appear to be, at least on the face of the pleadings, in order to get information. You know, if trustees or employees are willing to leak information, that can be done regardless of whether they're involved in a lawsuit or not. But I do know from the cases that I've seen, you know, what the limits are in terms of being able to, you know, keep information from a trustee or keep them away from a meeting. And it's really only in the instance where they're suing, you know, their fellow trustees or the district will the courts recognize some sort of limitation.
It would also be through a voluntary recusal on the part of the board member if that were an issue that would be brought up for discussion.
Well, I mean, yeah, trustees are always free not to, I mean, there's not an obligation, you know, that you have to, you know, to get access to any particular information or to be present at any particular point in the meeting. That's a voluntary decision.
Thank you, and I yield the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Colunga. You know, Mr. Colunga, do you have any questions, Dr. Saavedra? You know, Mr. Colunga, I'd like to get to the bottom of this as well. And if we did wrong, then fine. If HealthSmart did wrong, then fine. Someone needs to be held accountable. But I'm going to tell you one thing, that I want answers regarding this lawsuit that was filed, because we were told that we needed to file a lawsuit, even though we know what questions were asked in there. And some of the questions that even I asked, it left me with a thought in my mind that, you know, we need the answers at the court level. Let the court system decide who did what and who failed who. Because there is a contract that took place during this Health Smart and BISD. And let me tell you, I've learned my lesson from removing myself on another issue, another incident. And I found out that board members literally stripped me from my rights as an elected official. And it's a shame that I have been placed through one side of the court to the other side of the court just because people are trying to do things in a very vindictive way. And I will not remove myself from this because I think I'm honest. I want what's best for the district. I want what's best for our taxpayers' dollars, because those taxpayers should be placing the money in our classrooms, not because somebody is trying to decide to do something differently. But when I was told by my attorney that board members on this board, not the two new ones, decided to remove me and to have legal representation, and some votes took place that I was not even aware of. Where that recommendation came, I don't know. But I was stripped from my rights as an elected official. And it only keeps getting worse for some of us. This should not be a battle between us. We should understand what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. And let me tell you, when I found out that I had gotten stripped from my rights when I stepped out from listening to another case, I was not aware of that. And this happened 4 or 5 months ago, when it took place in 2010. So therefore, I'm going to let you know that I want the truth behind this case. I want to get to the bottom of it as well. Thank you, Mr. Colunga.
If I may, just a quick question and a concern. And I know that I hear what you're saying, I respect what you're saying, I respect what Mr. Colunga is saying. And I know that you want the best for this district, and I hear you say that all the time. And I do believe that deep in your heart, that's what your intentions are. I really believe that. Sometimes it doesn't come out like that, but I know that your intentions are there. Would it not be beneficial to you, especially involved, to excuse yourself from it and trust the 6 of us to take care of it without, you see what I'm saying? So there won't be any doubt, because you were never going to convince everyone of everything. We're just not. But I wouldn't want something to go wrong and then they'll blame you on it, because I don't think this is anything to do with any of us individually as a board. Am I correct? If I may address Mr. Michel, this case does not have anything to do with us as board members individually. Am I correct?
You're talking about the Health Smart
Yes, the
lawsuit.
Health Smart case has nothing to do with us as board members individually. Am I correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
So my only and this is just a suggestion, and you can take it with a grain of salt, to excuse yourself on your own behalf, to protect yourself, if anything else, to protect yourself, and not allow people to use you as a scapegoat in the future, because we know for a fact that people do that to us. That would be something to consider, and I'm telling you this sincerely, because yes, you do your job and you want to protect the district, but I can see this as an opportunity for somebody to come back and turn it into something it's not against you, and that wouldn't be fair to you, nor would it be fair to the district. And that's just a thought. I'm being sincere, because I know that if this happened with me and I was in your position, I would pull myself out to give nobody a reason. And I know sometimes our pride gets in the way and say, hey, you're not going to make me do this. But we need to protect ourselves sometimes. We have to, swallow our pride, because somebody could come back and say, and it could be somebody else doing it. It could be anybody else. And then they're going to run and say, oh, no, it was Ms. Presas because she has association with us. And I'm just suggesting that as a sincere board member, where it would protect you. But you do whatever you feel comfortable with. But I'd like to look at it that way, because it protects you, and you need all the protection, especially with the lawsuits that are going on. You need protection from that.
Thank you, Ms. Peña. Go ahead, Mr. Aguilar.
This Health Smart deals with the school district
Right.
itself. However, I'm going to clarify some things that was brought up tonight. I believe that we had an independent auditor that did an audit of the insurance. We were informed of some of the things when all of us were present. In fact, some of us were concerned about it and even questioned his credentials. We were told what was happening, and to come and tell the public that I didn't know what we were doing, why we were filing a suit against HealthSmart, is incorrect. Everybody knew it. And then my concern is that right from the beginning, when going out for bid for the insurance, certain individuals in this board were always against trying to favor HealthSmart. And this is public information because it's on the tape. When they came to us and made a presentation at that podium, we have 2 board members literally against hiring anyone else except HealthSmart. Fortunately, we went in a different direction, and it saved the district $9 million. That is my concern, that the same individuals that were fighting us to get somebody else are now saying, I didn't know anything about this, and now they want to vote on a health issue. They bring up all these lawsuits as a review. What is it to review? Let the attorneys handle this. Michelle, our attorney says that it's a legal thing, has nothing to do with us. Let the attorneys do this, and let the district handle this. Why should we get involved? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Aguilar.
Madam President,
Yes.
I call a question.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I call a question, so if there's a second, we can vote on it.
Yeah, let's put a vote. Second
Vote that to exclude me.
No, what I'm doing, I call a question, which means that which means that,
end the
you know, I have a
discussion.
second.
Now you vote on the
If I
motion.
can have the floor, you know, I'd like to finish my explanation.
Please, Ms. Peña.
If there's a second, we vote. If it passes, what that means is that all discussion ends, and then we vote on the item. So we either approve, vote the item up or down. But to call a question just means it ends the discussion, because obviously we're not getting anywhere. Did I make myself clear or no?
Yeah, I understand what call the question is.
So for clarification, Mr. Michelle, is this legal, the way we're bringing it up, to exclude me?
I think that if call the question passes, the item comes up, if it goes ahead and passes, then you may have a claim that they can't properly exclude you.
All in favor for the question?
All in favor for the question?
All right, so
Aye.
now we vote.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do I have a motion?
I move to take action in keeping Board Member Catalina Perez-Garcia from participating in any discussion, settlement, negotiation, strategy, decision, and/or voting with regard to the pending litigation with HealthSmart and/or Ted Parker because of the obvious conflict of interest wherein they share the same attorney.
Do I have a second? Motion by Mr. Colunga, second by motion by Mr. Colunga, second by Mr. Aguilar. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, but if I may explain my aye, I would like for Ms. Presas herself to exclude herself. I don't want us to force her out. So, you know, with that said, I'm going to abstain from this because I don't like the way the motion is written because it's forcing her out. I'd like for her to make the decision to pull herself out to protect herself. So I'd like to abstain from this completely because it's not against her. It's the way it was motioned. It's not something I agree with.
Motion fails. One abstain. Oh, all against? All against? 4 against, 4 nays, 1 abstain, and 2 yeas. Now we go to item number 14, recommend approval to pay ERO Architects, Inc., $800, Hannah High School Performing Arts Instructional Facility, Professional Services Industries, Inc., $710, Hannah High School Performing Arts Instructional Facility, Robert Kisner Consultants, Inc., $2,832.64, Brownsville Academic Center, Terracona Consultants, $1,440, Porter High School Instructional Facility, and D. Wilson Construction, $101,932.15, Porter High School Instructional Facility for a grand total of $107,714.79 to be paid from Local Maintenance Fund 199 Qualified School Construction Bond Fund. Dr. Saavedra, you had a question?
Yeah, I guess it was answered, I guess, earlier where this monies has been earmarked. Yes, Mr. Fuller? Has been earmarked for these projects?
That's correct.
I move to approve.
Second.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Second by, motion by Dr. Escobedo, second by Ms. Peña. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? 3 nays, 4 yeas. Recommend approval to pay PBK Architecting $475 and Roth Construction Inc. of $187,283.95. Pace and Porter Athletic Building tennis courts for a grand total of $187,758.95 to be paid from local maintenance fund 199. Dr. Saavedra?
Question?
Yes.
No, I have a question.
No, she has a question.
I'm not calling the question, I'm asking a question. I'm sorry, I confused you, I didn't mean to.
Go ahead, Ms.
Thank you.
Peña.
Mr. Fuller, Mr. Springsteen, may I address Mr. Fuller?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Fuller, and correct me if I'm wrong, these are payments for work that's already been done?
Yes, ma'am. This is work that's been ongoing, probably for the last year and a half or so.
So these are payments for services that have already been rendered to the district?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I move to approve.
I second.
Moved by Dr. Escobedo, second by Ms. Peña. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those against? 3 nays, 4 yeas. Recommend approval to pay Professional Service Industries, Inc., $2,387.80, Science Laboratory at Porter High Schools to be paid from Science Laboratory Grant Program. Dr. Saavedra?
I move to approve.
Second.
Moved by Dr. Escobedo, second by Ms. Peña. All those in favor?
Aye.
We have 4 yeas. All those against? It's a grant. Oh, do I have?
She's a yes.
Yes,
It's a grant.
it's a grant. Motion carries 7-0. We now go to recommend approval of the following budget amendments.
What
Item number
number?
17, recommend approval of budget amendment 115 in the amount of $180,000 for Fund 196 MAC Fund, categorical fund balance. Dr. Saavedra, you also have a question?
Yeah, I think, is this the one with the Special Olympics, the Medicaid? I guess I wanted just some clarification and explanation on that.
Sure,
Is that okay to do? I mean, is that okay to use?
Mr. Fuller?
I guess that's what I'm asking.
Yes, ma'am. These funds are generated by the Special Services area, and you can use them in the area of Special Olympics.
Is that for the Special Olympics?
Yeah, this
And
is strictly and solely
specifically
for Special Olympics.
Specifically.
I have a question.
Okay, I wanted clarification, then, thank you.
Are you done, Dr. Saavedra?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Ms. Longoria, you have a question.
It was my understanding that when you get a Medicaid reimbursement, this is federal monies, and these monies can only be used with related services. I mean, Special Olympics is a program within Special Ed Department, so why should it go to Special Olympics? Shouldn't it go back into the Special Ed Department account?
It's going to be used by the Special Services Department for Special Needs Children.
But it's for Special Olympics.
Right.
Special Olympics already has its own budget.
Ms. Peña?
Yes. The revenue generated by the MAC claims is dedicated to the provision of health services and may be used to enhance, improve, or expand the level and quality of health and medical services provided to all students within the district. So when they go to a Special Olympics, it is under the definition of health-related for these students. And we generate those funds, and it's now being used for special services. Why do we use, I want to explain a little bit about our Special Olympics. We have had a very energetic movement this year because our Special Olympics is a phenomenal program. We have so many students participating. Believe it or not, we've had an increase of student participation. We've had an increase of funds to be used in busing and lodging and meals. We have an increase of students because because we have an increase of students, we have an increase of staff that has to accompany these students, and that means overtime. And then lastly, I'd like to explain that we are working very, very hard at bringing down the prices of Special Olympics because it is very expensive. Last year, I believe in the past, we had spent $500,000 on Special Olympics. This year, we cut that to $300,000, and this is a 2-year process. We're going to bring it down even further next year. We're looking at $75,000 to $100,000. So we're working very cleverly to see how we can take, instead of taking the children to Hidalgo, so to speak, for an area competition. I think you got an invitation that Friday we're having the area competition hosted here in our community so that we don't spend the overtime, the hotels, the meals. But because of the increase and because Special Services and everyone there has done such a phenomenal job, we need to tap into our MAC funds.
Thank you, Mrs. Peña. Any further, Mr. Springston?
Mr. Michelle, she did ask that question, and so I would like clarification from you on that MAC funding. Do you see a problem with what we're doing here with these children?
No, I don't believe so. I could look into it further, but generally speaking, what you heard read is broad language under the IDEA, and that's how it's been interpreted.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Peña.
Any further discussion? Let the record reflect I'm taking over as temporary chair. Do I have a motion to approve item 17?
Move to approve 17.
I have a motion by Mrs. Peña. Do I have a second? Second by Mrs. Saavedra. All in favor, raise your right hand.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Item number 18, recommend approval of budget amendment number 116 in the amount of $4,000 for Fund 429, Community Research Partnership Grant for Veterans Memorial High School. This is new funding. I'll open the floor for discussion. Dr. Saavedra.
No, I didn't, I don't know what she said.
Mrs. Longoria? Anybody have questions? Do I have a motion to approve item 18?
Yeah,
I have a motion by Mrs. Peña, seconded by Dr. Saavedra. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. Number 19, recommend approval to enter into an agreement with the Brownsville PUB, Brownsville, Texas, to grant a utility easement for the Porter High School as described on the utility easement document. I'll open the floor for discussion. Mrs. Longoria.
Yes, I just wanted to ask if this agreement had been reviewed by legal.
Mr. Springston,
Mr. Guerra?
Yes, ma'am, it has been.
any further questions? If not, do I have a motion to approve item number
Move
19?
to approve.
Motion by Mrs. Peña, seconded by Dr. Saavedra. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Number 20, recommend approval to enter into an agreement with the Brownsville PUB, that's the same one.
Same thing.
No, that's a
Same
different
thing.
one, I'm sorry. To grant a water line
Palo
easement for
Alto.
the Palo Alto Support Service Center described on the utility easement document. I'll open the floor for discussion. Mrs. Longoria.
The same question if legal had reviewed this.
That is correct. Same
Bu-
answer.
Do I have a motion to approve item number 20?
Move to approve.
I have a motion by Mrs. Peña, seconded by Dr. Saavedra. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Number 21, recommend awarding RFP number 11-101, automobile general liability crime, law enforcement, and fuel tank storage liability insurance to 2 vendors, automobile general liability crime and law enforcement to Montalvo Insurance Agency of Weslaco, Texas, and fuel tank storage liability to Coastal Insurance Agency of Brownsville, Texas. It's an annual proposal. I'll open the floor for discussion. Dr. Saavedra.
Yes, I guess I was looking at the vendor list and making sure it was divided correctly. That was my question.
Okay.
Move to approve.
Move to
Miss-
approve.
Move to
Mrs.
approve.
Longoria, before we move on, question?
I just want to know, when does this contract expire, this policy expire?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Fuller?
April 1st
April 1st
of 2011.
2011? Okay, that was all.
Move to approve.
We're on item 21, Madam President. We have a motion and a
We
second.
have a motion by Ms. Peña, and second by Mr. Aguilar. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0. The board will now be going to closed meeting, executive session for personnel matters. It is now 10:05. We are now back into regular session. For items number 25 and 26. For items number 25, 26, 28, 29, 30, 31. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 6-0. Also, Ms. Perez, for the record, Mr. Colunga notified me that he was leaving at 9:05. Also, for item number 27, recommend approval of term contract, Chapter 21 contractual personnel for 2010-2011 school year and 2011-2012 school year. Dean of Instruction, subject to receipt of all outstanding documentation. Do I have a motion? Do I have a motion? Items dies for the lack of a motion. We now go to items 31, 32, 33, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36.
Ms. Breses, I make
Yes.
a motion that items 32 to 36 be tabled until the next meeting for April 5th.
Second.
I have a motion by Dr. Saavedra, second by Ms. Peña. All those in favor? Aye. Motion carries 6-0. We now go to items of announcements. Item number 40, Mr. Springston.
Yes, ma'am. Our next scheduled board meeting will be Tuesday, April the 5th, 2011.
Do I have a motion? Oh, also for the announcements, we also have the Special Olympics.
Our Area 1 meet, which is Friday, March the 4th, 9 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. here at Sam Stadium. Everyone is welcome to attend. I'd like to see everyone there to cheer on our students.
Thank you.
Move to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Dr. Escobedo, second by Ms. Peña. This meeting is adjourned.
Night, Brownsville.